What is gravity?
I have no idea. Okay, next question. This is called gravity. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. This is called gravity.
Neil, I gotta say, you're totally blowing my mind right now.
That's what I do. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
No, I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch. No, I am Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna keep doing that. Sorry, y'all. What's up, everybody? John the Morgal here, coming to you lively like from Honey Path, South Kakalaka. I hope y'all are doing very well on this moon day, December 23rd, 2024. A lot of stuff to talk about today, man. It's just going to be me, myself, and I for this one. So I hope you can chill with me for a little while as we go on a journey of some pretty far out stuff, to be very honest with you, man. And I guess we'll probably do a bit of a disclaimer before we roll the video that I'm going to respond to. But, you know, just as sort of an editorial note in case I forget, the views and opinions expressed throughout this video are not necessarily my views and opinions, right? And I'll let it be damn sure known which ones I agree with, which ones I don't, and which ones, you know, who knows, right? And so that's kind of the reason of the whole video response reaction thing, right? As y'all rightly know. I'm going to have to stop talking with my hands because I'm absolutely going to knock my lamp over, dude. So let me put this thing a little further away, although I do like that blue glow effect. It's just a little too damn close because I talk with my hands and I'll just be knocking shit over, man. Okay. So I think first, and let me just, if y'all don't mind, if you could give me some sort of a notice in the chat or with your thumb appendages to let me know that you can see and hear me okay. I would greatly appreciate it. Tasha Teeling says, am I streaming from the study or the drawing room? Yeah. I think I'm gonna do like Billy Carson. I'm gonna take the elevator to the library today. Depends on how I'm feeling, right? So yeah, Tasha Teeling, welcome. Looks like we've got 6 people live yet and 3 views as well. So I'm not sure how that works, YouTube, but if there are 6 people watching, how do I only have 3 views? Couldn't tell you, but I don't know why I'm even looking at the live data here. It somehow put me on that. But YouTube, what's up, man? And, you know, YouTube, I got to say, man, you are also one of the few actual real flat earthers that I've met in person at the Denver conference. So I got to tell you, man, that Denver conference was probably the most fun I've had in a long time. So, I mean, to be very honest with you, man, I've never had like an actual like vacation. I mean, maybe when I was a kid, right? But I guess, I don't know, people sort of take it for granted to like just, you know, fuck off, pack up your, I can't, why do I keep cussing in the first 8 minutes? Bleep that, sorry. But just to like, you know, pack up your things and shoot off to somewhere for a vacation for a couple of weeks. Like, I've never done that. Like, you know, in my adult life, we've always just been sort of like paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, if you take a couple of weeks off for work, you basically lose everything. Like, you know, when Mina's mom died, we took a week off of work to move her hospitals or to like take care of her. We ended up moving her hospitals because the hospital that she was in was basically like actively trying to kill her, it seemed. And so when we transferred her mom to another hospital, like, I think we were right because the first thing they did was pump her stomach, right? And they totally changed all of their protocols or whatever, their prognosis. I don't know. But, you know, long story short, they were feeding her a bunch of Ensures, which are just loaded with sodium. And she was having trouble throwing off fluids. It's a whole long thing, but the last thing that she needed was a lot of sodium in her diet, right? And so, like, even, you know, I could probably write a book about this, but even to this day, I kind of sort of think that they did kill her mama on purpose. And when I say they, I specifically mean Mina's sister. But we're not going to get into that. You know, there's insurance money and things involved, and if an old woman falls and breaks bones, it's not very hard to get like a doctor to sign off on things like don't give her any more water or food, which is like exactly what they did. Once we took that week off for work and left, like we switched her hospitals and she was fine, up joking. She was going to move in with us and stuff. So we left and the situation was great. Like it was a miracle, really, how much she had improved. But like as soon as we left, her sister put her back in the other hospital and she died within a week. I don't know how I got on talking about that. Yeah, it's so heartwarming. I know, man. Right? I just anytime, you guys, anytime. That's that patented Morgile therapy, right? I'm just full of fucking. I'm just full of warm and fuzzies today, ain't I? Man, what was I fucking even talking about, dude? Okay, I don't know, man. If someone can remind me in the chat what the fuck I was talking about. But okay, so what I'm gonna do as y'all try to figure out what the fuck the Morgile was talking about, dude. I'm gonna read this article just to get this thing warmed up a bit. And oh, now we've got 12 concurrent viewers and 20 views, so the numbers have totally flip-flopped, man. I don't know what to make. No read up. I wasn't at any FE conference. YouTube was not at any FE conference, so you weren't in Denver. I swear to God, dude, somebody came and introduced themselves to me as you, dude, as YouTube. My fucking right hand to God. Maybe there's more than one YouTube, dude. I don't know, man. But you really weren't in Denver? Yeah, somebody definitely claimed to be YouTube in Denver, dude. For sure. At the 2018 conference. I'm 100% sure. Maybe I misheard, dude, but like, I don't know, man. YouTube don't fucking sound like a lot of other things. Y'all got to stop me from cussing in the first 8 minutes of these things, man. Okay, so, oh wow, maybe they were posing as you. I guess, dude. Wow. See, that's why I've always sort of felt it. I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever you're in chat, like I always call you out because, as far as I thought, you were one of the few people that I've met in the flesh. So that's strange, dude. Unless maybe is there anybody else out there that knows of any other YouTubers in the United States? Wow. Anyway, okay, so let's get into this article. And before we do, just a little background, because it's Christmas time, we're celebrating the birthday of Jesus. I just wanted to read a little article about the Jesuit oath. And I just will first preface this for no reason by saying that, you know, just because someone attends a Jesuit high school does not necessarily make them a Jesuit. And that is true. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, so let's read in this article. Jude 1:4, the extreme oath of the Jesuits, know your enemy. Okay, and link for this article is in the description. Revelation 20, October 10th, 2023. Jude 1:3-4, beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our Most High into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God, and the Most High Creator, and Yeshua, Jesus Christ. Okay, that's an end quote from the Bible there, and continuing on with this article here. Again, link in the description. For the last year and a half, this article was written October 2023. So for the last year and a half, this author has been researching the men and women who have discipled me over the years through various books, devotionals, sermons, and Bible studies. These individuals would have been considered the most conservative, reliable, and biblically faithful. Thanks for spreading his kingdom came. Wait a minute. So now I'm just now I'm just reading like gobbledygook because again, I hate all these caveats. Okay, so my computer's a piece of crap, and if I try to read an article from a web page, like it crashes my computer. So I have to copy and paste the article from the web page onto a notepad file, and I get a bunch of gobbledygook, and I never notice it until I'm reading the fucking thing. So I'm sorry, I've got to sort of manually filter out the gobbledygook. Okay. Back to the quote. Some have become especially known for their discernment and their love of truth and willingness to contend. Every now and then I would see what I considered strange anomalies, sometimes a statement or a picture that I didn't quite know how to process. Yet my trust in the individual always overcame any questions, and I would just brush it off. And by the way, this author of this article is not me, okay? This is not my article, so just for the record. Okay, it wasn't until this author understood where we are on the biblical timeline that he recalled some of those anomalies. He decided to circle back around and scrutinize his heroes of the faith with a far more discerning eye. Wow, it's never easy to accept that you've been deceived, especially when you always considered yourself to be more discerning than most. It has been heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. I now see Jude's warning that they creep in unaware in a whole new light, and this author is warning as many as he can. We must know our enemy. Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Copied and pasted comments and emphasis are mine. I'm kidding. I read that one on purpose. Okay, so the Jesuit extreme oath of induction given to high-ranking Jesuits only. This oath is taken from the book Subterranean Rome by Carlos Didier, translated from the French and published in New York in 1843. Quote. So this is a quote within a quote from that book just mentioned right there. When a Jesuit of the minor rank is to be elevated to command, he is conducted into the chapel of the convent of the order, where there are only 3 others present, the principal or superior standing in front of the altar. On either side stands a monk, one of whom holds a banner of yellow and white, which are the papal colors, and the other a black banner with a dagger and a red cross above a skull and crossbones with the word INRI or INRI, and below them the words Iustum Necar Regis Impius, the meaning of which is, it is just to exterminate or annihilate impious or heretical kings, governments, or rulers. Upon the floor is a red cross at which the postulant or candidate kneels. The superior hands him a small black crucifix, which he takes in his left hand and presses to his heart. And the superior at the same time presents to him a dagger, which he grasps by the blade and holds the point against his heart, the superior still holding it by the hilt, and thus addresses the postulant. Superior says, my son, heretofore you have been taught to act the dissembler among Roman Catholics, to be a Roman Catholic, and to be a spy, even among your own brothers, to believe no man, to trust no man. among the reformers to be a reformer, among the Huguenots to be a Huguenot, among the Calvinists to be a Calvinist, among other Protestants generally to be a Protestant, and obtaining their confidence to seek even to preach from their pulpits, and to denounce with all the vehemence in your nature your holy religion and the Pope, and even to descend so low as to become a Jew among Jews. This is a quote, not from me. My wife is a third Jewish, okay? So I'm not an anti-Semite, and you can't have this video taken down because it's a quote for entertainment purposes only. To become a Jew, end quote, back to the quote, a Jew among Jews, that you might be enabled to gather together all information for the benefit of your order as a faithful soldier of the Pope. So they stand in our pulpits and actually denounce the Pope and Roman Catholicism while at the same time working for their cause. And I'll just add, the Pope is a baller, right? Pope's got more money than God. You know what I mean? For sure. Back to the quote. So you have been taught to insidiously plant the seeds of jealousy and hatred between communities, provinces, states that were at peace, and incite them to deeds of blood, involving them in war with each other, and to create revolutions and civil wars in countries that were independent and prosperous, cultivating the arts and sciences and enjoying the blessings of peace. To take sides with the combatants and to act secretly with your brother Jesuit, who might be engaged on the other side, but openly opposed to that which you might be connected, only that the church might be the gainer in the end, in the conditions fixed in the treaties for peace, and that the end justifies the means. Engaging in, excuse me, engaging in manufactured controversy, pretending to openly contend with those whom they are secretly connected. This is how they gain status, become heroes, and earn the allegiance of all the unsuspecting sheeple. When they speak out against Rome, it doesn't mean they aren't aligned with Rome. When they preach against Freemasonry, it doesn't mean they're not Freemasons. This is how deception works, friends. You have been taught your duty as a spy to gather all statistics, facts, and information in your power from every source, to ingratiate yourself into the confidence of the family circle of Protestants and heretics of every class and character, as well as that of the merchant, the banker, the lawyer, the crypto guru, if I will add myself, among the schools and universities, in parliaments and legislatures, and the judiciaries and councils of state, and to be all things to all men for the Pope's sake, whose servants are unto death. You have received all your instructions heretofore as a novice and a neophyte, and have served as a co-adjurer, confessor, and priest, but you have not yet been invested with all that is necessary to command in the army of Loyola in the service of the Pope. You must serve the proper time as the instrument and executioner as directed by your superiors. For none can command here who has not consecrated his labors with the blood of the heretic. For, quote, without the shedding of blood, no man can be saved. Therefore, to fit yourself for your work and make your own salvation sure, you will, in addition to your former oath of obedience to your order and allegiance to the Pope, repeat after me. So, this is a demonstration only. This oath holds no bearing. I am of sound mind, and I am not actually taking this oath. But here's the oath, quote, I, whatever that stupid fucker's name is, now in the presence of Almighty God, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the Blessed Michael the Archangel, the Blessed Saint John the Baptist, the Holy Apostles Saint Peter and Saint Paul, and all the saints and sacred hosts of heaven, and to you, my ghostly father, the superior general of the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits, founded by Saint Ignatius Loyola in the pontificate of Paul III and continued to the present, do by the womb of the Virgin in the matrix of God with a big G and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness the Pope is Christ's vice regent and is the true and only head of the Catholic or universal church throughout the earth, and that by virtue of the keys of binding and loosing given to His Holiness by my Savior Jesus Christ, He has power to dispose heretical kings, princes, states, commonwealths, and governments, all being illegal without His sacred confirmation, and that they may safely be destroyed. Therefore, to the utmost of my power, I shall and will defend this doctrine of His Holiness's right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority, whatever, especially the Lutheran of Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and now the pretended authority and churches of England and Scotland, and branches of the same now established in Ireland and on the continent of America and elsewhere, and all adherents in regard that they be usurped and heretical, opposing the Sacred Mother Church of Rome. I do now renounce and disown any allegiance as due to any heretical king, prince, or state-named Protestants or liberals, or obedience to any of the laws, magistrates, or officers. Damn, this is one lengthy-ass oath, ain't it? Continuing on with the oath. As a quote, and this is not me taking an oath, I do further declare that the doctrine of the churches of England and Scotland, of the Calvinists, Huguenots, and others of the name Protestants or liberals, to be damnable, and they themselves damned who will not forsake the same. I do, or whoever this fucking idiot is taking this oath doth further declare that they will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness's agents in any place wherever that fool shall be, in Switzerland and Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, England, Ireland, or America, or in any other kingdom or territory shall this fool come to, and do this fool's uttermost to extirpate. Okay. This fool to do his uttermost to extirpate the heretical Protestants or liberals' doctrines and to destroy all their pretended powers, regal or otherwise. This fool do further promise and declare that notwithstanding this fool am dispensed with to assume this fool's religion heretical, for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interest to keep secret and private all her agents' counsels from time to time, as they may entrust me, and not to divulge, directly or indirectly, by word, be proposed, given in charge, or discovered unto me by you, my ghostly father, or any of this sacred covenant. Wow. Am I reading the above statement correctly? Any denunciation of Roman Catholicism is for the purpose of propaganda and is to serve the Mother Church's interest. Tuck that away in the back of your mind. The author of this article does further promise and declare that, oh no, I'm sorry, so this is back to the oath, sorry. This fool do further promise and declare that this fool will have no opinion or will of his own or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ. The militia of Jesus Christ, as if that's not an absolute obvious oxymoron, right? That this fool may go to any part of the world, whithersoever this fool may be sent, to the frozen regions of the north or the south, the burning sands of the desert of Africa, or the jungles of India, to the centers of civilization of Europe, or to the wild haunts of the barbarous savages of America, without murmuring or repining, and will be submissive in all things whatsoever communicated to me. This fool furthermore promises and declares that this fool will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as this fool is directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth. And that this fool will spare neither age, sex, nor condition, and that this fool will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. That when the same cannot be done openly, this fool will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as this fool at any time may be directed so to do by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith, the Societe of Jesus. So I will say that it isn't out of just how noble these Jesuits are that they do things like go far into the freezing north. So it's not just because they're so noble, right? It's because they have to follow orders, right? Sorry, okay. In confirmation of which this fool hereby dedicates his life, his soul, and all his corporal powers, and with this dagger which this fool now receives, this fool will subscribe his name, written in his own blood, in testimony thereof, and should this fool prove false or weaken in his determination, may his brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off his hands and his feet, and my throat from ear to ear, my belly opened and sulfur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul be tortured by demons in an eternal hell forever. All of which this fool, and whatever the fuck his name is, doth swear by the blessed Trinity. I swear I thought that said Turkey, but I was good. By the blessed Trinity and blessed sacraments, I got turkey on the brain, y'all, a little bit hungry, sorry. And blessed sacraments, which this fool am now to receive, to perform, and on his part to keep inviolable, and do call all the heavenly and glorious host of heaven to witness the blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, and witness the same further with my name, written and with the point of this dagger dipped in this fool's own blood and sealed in the face of that holy covenant. End quote from the oath there. Continuing with this article, so he receives the wafer from the superior and writes his name with the point of his dagger dipped in his own blood, taken from over his heart. And the superior says, "You will now rise to your feet, and I will instruct you in the catechism necessary to make yourself known to any member of the Society of Jesus belonging to this rank. In the first place," hang on, my damn cigarette keeps going out. Right. Okay, in the first place, you as a brother Jesuit, or that fool, again, this is the superior replying back to the one that's taken the oath, right? So in the first place, you fool, as brother Jesuit, you will with another mutually make the ordinary sign of the cross as an ordinary Roman Catholic would. Then one cross his wrists, the palm of his hands open, and the other in answer crosses his feet, one above the other. The first points with a forefinger of the right hand to the center of the palm of the left. The other with the forefinger of the left hand points to the center of the palm of the right. The first then with his right hand makes a circle around his head, touching it. The other then with the forefinger of his left hand touches the left side of his body just below his heart. The first then with his right hand draws it across the throat of the other, and the latter then with a dagger down the stomach and abdomen of the first. The first then says, Iustum, and the other answers Nekar. The first, Regis, the other answers impious, the meaning of which has already been explained in the beginning, and I done forgot what it means, so whatever. Quote, the first will then present a small piece of paper folded in a peculiar manner 4 times, which the other will cut longitudinally, and on opening the name Jesuit will be found written upon the head and arms of a cross 3 times. You will then give and receive with him the following questions and answers. Question, from whither do you come? Answer, the Holy Faith. Question, whom do you serve? The answer is the Holy Father at Rome, the Pope, and the Roman Catholic Church universal throughout the world. Question would be, who commands you? And the correct answer would be the successor of Saint Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus, or the Soldiers of Jesus Christ. And the question, who received you? Answer would be a venerable man in white hair. Question would be how? And the answer is with a naked dagger, I kneeling upon the cross beneath the banners of the hope of the Pope and of our sacred order. Question, did you take an oath? Answer should be, I did, to destroy heretics and their governments and rulers, and to spare neither age, sex, nor condition, to be as a corpse without any opinion or will of my own, but to implicitly obey my superiors in all things without the hesitation or murmuring. Question, will you do that? Answer should be, no, fuck off. No, it's, I will. Question, how do you travel? Answer would be in the bark of Peter the fisherman. Question, whither do you travel? The answer should be to the 4 quarters of the globe. And that's what it says, to the 4 quarters of the globe. Question, for what purpose? Answer, to obey the orders of my general and superiors and execute the will of the Pope and faithfully fulfill the conditions of my oaths. Question, go ye then and into the world and take possession of all lands in the name of the Pope. He who will not accept him as the vicar of Jesus and his vice-regent on earth, let him be accursed and exterminated. So they're not talking about like forcing people to believe in Jesus. That would be weird. No, they're talking about forcing people to believe that the Pope and his minions are Jesus. Editor's notes. So just we're almost done with this the article, and then we're going to get into the meat of this, I promise. Okay, so the editor's notes here, maybe it's interesting. This oath, Alberto Ribera taking the Jesuit oath. This oath is taken from the book Subterranean Rome by Carlos Didier, translated from the French and published in New York in 1843. Dr. Alberto Rivera escaped from the Jesuit order in 1967, and he describes his Jesuit oath in exactly the same way as it appears in this book. Semper idem, always the same, or semper idem, always the same. The Jesuit oath of induction is also recorded in the Congressional Record of the U.S. House Bill 1523, contested election case of Eugene C. Bonnewell against Thos S. Butler, February 15th, 1913. So there you have that. Pretty damn crazy, right? I don't know how that could possibly apply to anything or anyone ever, right? It's just because it's Christmas time. I figured I would read something about the Society of Jesus, but that didn't seem too Christmassy, you guys. I probably should have figured that out way sooner, but I figured they were going to start talking about the presents in the Santa Claus pretty soon, and they never did, dude. They never did. Okay. So, let's get into the meat of this thing. And if I haven't said it already, one love, you guys. I hope y'all are doing well. I hope you're enjoying the Christmas. I hope you all have a good Christmas. Okay. So, we're going to do a response to a video that is called The Hidden Teachings of Jesus. Okay. Now, I've mentioned this video a couple times in recent streams. So this is the one I was talking about before, right? And I watched this a few years ago, and it really kind of struck a chord with me. Now, I'm not saying that I just subscribe to everything that we're about to see, okay? Not in the slightest, but I think it's very interesting because from where I'm coming from, Jesus, Yeshua, the majority of his life was omitted from the Bible, right? And so there's a lot left to speculation, but this particular take on it is a very interesting particular take on potentially, what Yeshua was about during his years prior to the, in between the time where he was a little kid teaching the rabbis like the meanings of letters, and between that time and the time that he's like meeting up with John the Baptist at the river or whatever. So like that whole gap of probably 25 years is just totally gone. We don't like, there really is no real definitive answer as to like what was dude all about during his years. And I think this is a very interesting take. Now, I do know that there is a great deal of like angst and fear against things like yoga and the New Age movement. And I just want to sort of assure you guys that I've been exposed to this sort of thing for a long time. And I have always been a Christian, even before Flat Earth. And after Flat Earth, my faith in the Most High, creator of all things, and my relationship with Yeshua ben Yosef has only skyrocketed, right? And I can't prove that to you guys, but I can just attest to it. And hopefully, believe me or not, whatever. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, whatever. But this particular take, I just don't think we can ignore this kind of stuff anymore. And take of it what you will, and I will let y'all know exactly how I feel about every bit of it. So there's not going to be any sort of ambiguity or whatever. So let's get right into it. And let me roll it for a minute. I'm just going to make sure y'all can hear it, and then we're going to get back to it. Link for this is in the description as well. So if you want to see the whole thing uninterrupted, have at it.
The hidden teachings of Jesus. The reason Jesus spoke in parables is because he knew that if he spoke plainly about his teachings, that the powers that control the world would never allow his teachings to be disseminated. And so he created Trojan horses full of truth. And the powers that be embraced Jesus' teachings, not understanding that the meaning behind these parables would expose their lies and distortions. This video will open up these Trojan horses and let the truth expose those that have hijacked it and contorted Jesus' real teachings. After watching this video, as Jesus himself said, John 8:32, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free."
I would just say real quick, insofar, like, I have no sort of problems with anything dude just said, right? And I just want to check with you guys and make sure that you are, in fact, able to hear the presentation end of the thing. So let me just make sure, if y'all don't mind, just let me know in chat if you can hear presentation. And then once I get some kind of confirmation from you guys, I'll go right back to it. I mean, I guess I can check on my own. I just don't want to crash my computer is all. Oh, I got to turn this fan on too. Shit. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me turn this fan on, and then hopefully I will have confirmation from y'all lovely people. 1 second. I'm gonna grab something to drink. I'll be right back. Oh, I got the money. Oh, okay. Okay. So Christ Win says in the last line of the Bible, Jesus exclaimed that he was Lucifer. What? I don't remember that. So number one, like Yahuwah says, if you're going to start mixing New Age pagan spiritualism with Yahshua, Messiah, then that is nonsense. All that New Age spiritualism, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. comes from Babylonian religions. Wow. So we haven't even gotten into the video and already people are up in arms. And, you know, that's how you know the programming is working. First of all, I haven't gone on about anything. The extent of my exposure to like yoga is this. My aunt, so like my dad's sister, has been a yoga instructor and like an aerobics instructor and stuff for a very, very long time. And so decades ago, when I was pretty young, my aunt, you know, walked me and my brother and I think like my dad and walk the family through some yoga breathing exercises. And I gotta tell you, there's definitely something to yoga. And what I mean by that is, so like the American lifestyle is so like sedentary, and most Americans, you know, don't do much cardio. And even the ones that do, Americans, like, I guess modern people tend not to breathe properly, right? And what I mean by that is like, and I think this video may even touch on this sort of thing, but so like your lungs have basically 4 chambers, like 2 on this side, 2 down here. And unless you're expelling all the carbon dioxide from your lungs, you're doing it all wrong, okay? And so merely breathing properly, which is sort of hard boiled into certain yoga breathing exercises, is extremely therapeutic. And the health benefits are just like phenomenal, right? But unfortunately, that sort of thing is never, like, even just simple things. Like a lot of people go on about eating properly, which is so important, right? And so like instead of eating fucking processed foods, just doing the natural thing is so important. And like doctors won't tell you anything about that. Just go on ahead and keep on eating your Twinkies and McDonald's burgers, right? Fine, just take these pills, you'll be fine, right? But they're never going to tell you, you know, maybe change your diet. A dietitian probably will, but that's about it. But in terms of like breathing properly, no doctor is ever going to tell you, you know, maybe if you did some breathing exercises, you wouldn't be in such deep shit with your lungs. And it's like the American culture is so hard coded with that sort of thing that like I can't even get my wife to do breathing exercises because she is like way like Baptist mindset, right? She's like a third Jewish, a third Native American, and a third Bible Belt Baptist, whatever that is. I don't know. Italian. She's Italian, right? It's amazing that she isn't a Catholic, but no, she was raised and still adheres very much to the concept that the King James Bible is the Word of God, and anybody who says otherwise pretty much can just go stuff it. And I respect that. You know, I know a lot of Christians like that, but that's kind of how Mina is. Like, she will kind of humor this sort of thing. Now, we're going to get back into this video, but I just love the knee-jerk reactions coming from Christians. Again, I'm not making claims about this stuff that we're about to get into that we haven't even gotten into. I think it's interesting, and I think it's not that it's entirely possible that we're missing something about Yeshua's walk and ministry. It is the fact that we are definitely missing big, big, big things about Yeshua's walk and ministry. Big things, okay? And the Vatican and the Synagogue of Satan have gone to extreme lengths over the centuries or even possibly millennia to first murder Yeshua. And then when he resurrected and Christians started popping off all over the place, then the Roman Empire and the Synagogue of Satan teamed up to go around the world killing Christians, banning their teachings, burning their books, and ultimately synthesizing themselves as the official vicars of Christ on earth. Okay, so in that sort of regard, pretty much all of the books that modern Christians consider as the word of God are nothing more than a deception by these evil people that Yeshua was warning us about. The synagogue of Satan, whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones, a den of vipers, you know. And so anyone that tells me that I am promoting new age shit is full of it, man. I'm not promoting anything. But I also think that what you're doing is against the teachings of Yeshua. What you're doing is against that. Because to reject a point of view that you disagree with, not because of its merits, but because of your programming, you know, you're unfortunately, but that mindset is exactly the sort of thing that would get adults with millstones tied to their necks cast in the ocean. So like what those adults did to you, they kind of deserve that, in my opinion. Okay. But let's just get back to the video as long as y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me good? Oh, not hear me. Can y'all hear the presentation was what I was asking. I'm just going to assume that y'all can hear the presentation. Let me just play it again. And if y'all cannot hear it, then I'll check back on the chat in a minute.
The world you live in is not real. You think that you were born into this world, but it is the exact opposite. The world is born in you. Every time you place your consciousness through the mind and the five senses, you create this world. There is a parallel world that coincides with this world that you can also experience instead of this one. After opening...
Okay, so right there in the beginning, I don't necessarily agree with all that. I really do agree with the first part, right? So like we think that we're born into the world, but really the world is born in us. Like I kind of do agree with that, right? So like in a sense, you know, our experience here is just like they said in the Matrix, it is electrical signals interpreted by the brain, right? And so like what we see, touch, taste, smell, all that is kind of an illusion, if you will, that is, you know, presented to us by the brain. But on the other hand, I also am of the belief that there is such a thing as objective reality. And while you can definitely look at things in different ways, and I think that there are things like glitches in the Matrix, you know, I've had enough personal experiences to know that there is something to the paranormal and lots of different flavors of that. But I also do not go so far as to agree with what the dude just said there. So I'm not watching this video to debunk the dude or disagree with him. I will tell you when I vehemently disagree with him, but I really want to get to some important points here without having to defend myself from the Christians who believe that the deception is the word of God. Okay, so.
Opening up a few energy centers in your body, you can experience this world whenever you want. Jesus called this world the kingdom of heaven. Jesus taught what would today be called Kundalini Yoga. Yoga is a science. It is not a religion. A religion is when you have faith or belief in another person's experience of the divine. Yoga is a systematic and scientific method of experiencing the divine. Jesus was not a Jew.
Okay. I'm gonna have to disagree with him that it's scientific, but that's like whatever, okay? This is a pretty old video, and this dude is not pertaining to the flat Earth debate at all. So we will excuse the stolen valor of science for this example, okay? If y'all can just roll with this, again, I'm not presenting this as something that I agree with. I'm presenting this as something as interesting, and I think that it does give us some of the outlines of the pieces that we're missing. I really do believe that.
Nor did he preach a religion. He was a yogi. The people of his day called him rabbi because he taught about the divine, and conceptually where they were coming from, only rabbis did. Jesus was killed because he upset the power structure of his day, saying that the traditional practice of worship was not an effective way to experience the divine. Jesus preached yoga, a methodical way to experience the divine. The body your consciousness is placed in comes with a mind, and the mind acts as a bottleneck in the ability of the consciousness to utilize the brain. The mind actually prevents you from fully accessing your capabilities. As long as you use the mind,
I will attest to that as well.
Use the mind to perceive the world, you do not have the capability or the capacity to understand who and what you are or what you are capable of. You were born to sin. This is what Jesus said. And this is no fault of your own, because your consciousness was placed in a malfunctioning body. The world you perceive with your five...
I wouldn't say malfunctioning, but I would say your consciousness or like your spirit was placed into the body of flesh, or like the trap of flesh, the trappings of the flesh, if you will.
Five senses and mind doesn't even exist. It is a creation of the mind. Sinning is believing that you are the body and the worldly desires it creates has something to offer you. Your consciousness has only received information from the mind and the five senses your entire life. So you erroneously believe this is what you are. But if you were the mind, you could tell it to stop thinking and it would.
I would disagree only on the point that dreams are sort of an exception to that rule that he just mentioned, right? So like when you're dreaming, your conscience is experiencing things that are not of, inputs of the sight or the ears or whatever, right? So it's just this kind of semantic argument there, but
when you go to a movie theater, you know that what you are seeing is not real. Yet you still go through a roller coaster of emotions as your endocrine system pumps out various hormones depending on what you see. And it is all fantasy. When the movie is over, you walk outside into the real world, and again, you go through a roller coaster of emotions as your endocrine system pumps out more hormones depending on what your mind thinks and perceives from the real world. What is the difference? In the first example, the world you are experiencing is light being shown through still frame pictures flashing by. In the second example, the world you are experiencing doesn't even exist until you create it by placing the light of your consciousness through the filter of your mind and five senses.
Okay, so something that dude just said right there, and I remember when I first watched this thing, that struck a chord with me. Not that I agree with what he's saying necessarily, but the part about the experience starts with the light of your consciousness being applied to this experience, right? And I really think that there's something to that, so like hearkening back to like the double slit experiment where they prove that light is both a wave and a particle, right? Which in my opinion means that it's neither a particle nor a wave. And so like this whole discussion of ether and the infinite space is just more of the same, right? But if it turns out that the process of seeing light has to do with the fact that there is light within, and I'm pretty sure that has been demonstrated by things like MRIs or brain scans or whatever, that the pineal gland actually has some way, like bioluminescence within. So like perhaps the whole thing with the speed of light seeming instantaneous is because sure, there's a source of light out here, but there's also a receptacle of light in here, right? So I don't know. I think that there's something to this. I think that there's definitely like very important nuggets in this sort of philosophy that we can appreciate and respect. without necessarily subscribing to the entire philosophy, if that makes sense.
Your thoughts from the mind are so powerful that they press upon the unmanifested and create the world you are experiencing. When your consciousness transcends the mind and five senses and is shown through the Ajna chakra, or third eye, a completely different world is both created and experienced. As Jesus said in Matthew 6:22, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for he will either hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Jesus is clearly telling us that we are sinning when our consciousness is placed through the filter of the mind and the five senses with two eyes instead of our Ajna chakra, or third eye.
So again, a lot of these terms this dude's using, I don't know what they mean. And like, I do realize, like, as a Christian, because that's what I am, and that's what I was raised in, probably more stringently and intensively than most. Like, I was raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, and I was an altar boy, so I was there like 3, 4, or 5 times a week, sometimes for like 5, 6 hours at a time. Like, and so I'm familiar with this sort of indoctrination to where when you start hearing these terms, and I'm familiar like with the sound of the terms, right? And I know that that stuff must be evil because, you know, it's not in the KJV Bible, so it's got to be evil. It's got to be a deception, right? So just food for thought. Like, let's try not to give into our knee-jerk reactions just because you're not familiar with, or you vehemently disagree with this information that you don't even have yet.
Third eye, thine eye, or single. Why do religions teach us that sinning is acting on the desires of the mind? Jesus is saying that you can serve the body or you can serve the divine depending on where your consciousness is placed. When Jesus looked upon the ocean through his opened Ajna chakra, he saw vibrating energy. And since he himself was vibrating energy, he could walk upon it. When we look at the ocean, we see
like that there. I don't know what that means. That sounds like a bunch of nonsense to me, honestly. I don't know what any of that means. And it sounds like more pseudoscience, but you know, as long as you sound scientific, right, and use big words, then people just, you know, and say science, then people accept it. So like, I'm of the sort of faith that it's not really important to me whether Jesus actually walked on water. I would suggest that, in my opinion, that probably never happened. Maybe it did. But the point is like, if I was to learn tomorrow that Jesus never actually walked on water and that was a lie, that was part of this deception that are peppered liberally throughout the KJV and modern Christianity books, and if it turned out that that wasn't true, it wouldn't affect my faith at all. Not at all, because it doesn't have anything to do with that. But again, so what? Like, again, so we're gonna I'm gonna personally reject the shit that the dude just said. Okay, but let's just continue, because I'm telling you, there's some very interesting and important things that we're about to unpack right now.
we see water, and so the physical world our thoughts create would drown us if we attempted Jesus' feet with our unopened third eye. The goal of this documentary is...
But again, maybe it's true. I'm not saying I don't believe it, and I will never believe it. Like, maybe it's true. Maybe everything dude just said is true, and maybe dude did walk on water. You know, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying it's not important to my faith personally, not in the slightest.
is to help you recognize your Christ consciousness, or the second coming of Christ. Jesus is not coming back. He never left. In John 8:58, Jesus said, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am.
And, you know, I think that's an interesting concept too. Jesus isn't coming back. He never left, right? We were just sort of, you know, blind, I think, as a society, maybe.
If Jesus existed before his body, how could he die with his body? Just like you, Jesus is, was, and will always be timeless consciousness. The second coming of Christ is one of the most misinterpreted aspects of the Bible. The second coming of Christ refers to you recognizing and obtaining your Christ consciousness. How do you achieve this? You follow Jesus' teachings.
Okay. And so there's another one of those sort of loaded terms that people run away from, especially Christians, that Christ consciousness. But what dude just said is, how do you obtain this Christ consciousness? For lack of a better phrase, you follow Jesus's teachings, right? And so if that claim that he just made right there is true, I'm interested. My ears are perking up, right? Because this dude clearly has a novel or like unique way of looking at this information that I'm familiar with. And some of it definitely rings true, and really more than rings true, it strikes a chord in me, if you will, right? So see where it goes.
Jesus was a yogi. When Jesus spoke the words, Matthew 11:29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls," Jesus was referring to his yoga. The word yoke and yoga both mean joining. What is being joined? Your soul with your Christ consciousness, enabling you to tap into the universal consciousness.
And what does dude mean by Christ consciousness? I'm not sure. I think probably everybody has different the definitions of that sort of thing. But from what I'm understanding, what he's saying is not tap into your Christ consciousness, but communicate with God, the Most High, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, I've always sort of felt that's what Yeshua was all about, right? Like, trying to show people that we don't need to pay priests and, murder goats in order to communicate with God, right? We don't need to participate in Forex scams at the temple and things like that in order to, communicate with God. And so this stuff does kind of make a bit of sense, even though it is very much foreign to my, faith and worldview and upbringing and things like that.
Your anahata chakra with your ajna chakra, your heart with your intellect. How do you do this? You do what Jesus did. You study and practice the science of yoga. Ask a Catholic priest or a Christian minister what Jesus was doing from the ages of 13 to 30. Why is this period of time when Jesus went from an intellectually gifted young man to Jesus the Christ left out of the Bible? To a Christian, Jesus is the most important person to have ever lived, yet the majority of his life is completely left out of the Bible. How is this possible? How did Jesus become enlightened? And what exactly was Jesus doing when he was fasting out in the desert for 40 days? Jesus spent his adolescent years and young adulthood traveling through India, Nepal, and Tibet, studying.
Okay, so just not to break this up, but I do disagree with him making absolute definite claims. I would just say that it is possible, right? So not to pick apart what dude's saying, but he's pretty sure about what he's saying. I don't remember there being any evidence to support what he's saying here, but like, I think that this sort of, the cultural evidence, or I think that there is some supporting evidence to this claim, right? It's just he doesn't bring it up in this video, I don't think. But anyway, let's continue.
Studying, practicing, and teaching yoga. The three wise men from the East that visited him were rishis from India. There is no country called the East. Why do the Christian religions obfuscate these facts? Why don't they want you to know the true path to the divine? Jesus was given the option to disavow his teachings. In return, his life would be spared. He declined, saying, "My body means nothing to me. My teachings are the sole purpose of why I am here." And yet today there are religions named after him that completely disregard his teachings. Revelation 1:12 states, "And I turned to see the voice that spoke with me. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man. And in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword. And his countenance was as the sun, shineth in his strength." When Jesus revealed his true form to his disciple John, John saw Jesus' 7 chakras. Jesus himself said in Revelations 1:20, "The 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches." What do you do at a church? You worship. Jesus called them candlesticks. The yogis call them chakras. They are the same thing. Jesus was a Kundalini yoga master. The 7 seals, 7 lamps.
So again, the only thing I would change if it was me narrating this and I don't agree with dude at all necessarily on this stuff, but like I think he probably should have said, you know, it's possible that da 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 da, right? So these definite claims are a bit bothersome to me. But again, I think I've made my caveat statements quite enough, and let's just get back into it because it's very fascinating to me.
Lamps, 7 candlesticks, 7 stars, 7 churches in the Bible are referring to what yogis call the 7 chakras. In John 3:3, Jesus says, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Except a man be born of water and of spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I say unto thee, ye must be born again." And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. The water birth Jesus is talking about obviously refers to when you are born to your mother. The spiritual birth that Jesus talks about is what the yogis refer to as your kundalini. You do not become spirit until you have turned on your kundalini, opened up all of your chakras, and raised your kundalini to your crown chakra.
Okay, so now again, I don't know what any of that stuff means. I mean, I kind of get the gist of what he's saying there. And I do realize that those terms are very new age sounding, and it's very scary and, like, you know, uncomfortable for anybody who's xenophobic, right? And I don't blame people for that, because we, at least as Christians, we're all sort of programmed into rejecting, you know, offhand anything that isn't, you know, exactly as the preacher said. Okay. And so again, I just got to get this out there again. These are not necessarily my views and opinions, but wow. If what dude is saying is true, so like if we just hypothetically go with this here, it actually kind of makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? It actually kind of makes a lot of sense.
Chakra. Jesus is speaking about the electrical system inside our bodies that make our respiratory system, circulatory system, and digestive system redundant. They are not needed after you have your spiritual birth. You are destined to transmigrate or reincarnate until you have this spiritual birth. From the Gospel of James. And I answered and said to him, Lord, do not mention to us the cross and the death, for they are far from you. The Lord answered and said, Truly I say to you, none will be saved unless they believe in my cross. But those who have believed in my cross, theirs is the kingdom of God. Therefore become seekers for death, just as the dead who seek for life. For that which they seek is revealed to them, and what is there to concern them? When you turn yourself towards death, it will make known to you election. In truth I say to you, none of you who are afraid of death will be saved. For the kingdom of God belongs to those who have put themselves to death. Become better than I. Make yourselves like the Son of the Holy Spirit. Jesus is talking about what the yogis refer to as nirvikalpa samadhi, where the yogi dissolves his ego and has complete union with the divine. Me and my Father are one. In this samadhi, the heart, breath, digestive system have all been shut down by the yogi in a deep state of meditative bliss. This is what Jesus was doing out in the desert for 40 days. The energy centers, or chakras, start at the base of the spine and go to the top of the head. The spine resembles a snake, and so just as Moses lifted up the serpent, or kundalini, in the wilderness, we must also. Jesus talks about transmigration, or reincarnation, right in the Bible.
Okay, so just holding that thought for a minute. So, you know, with this sort of hypothesis, right, like one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm just going to, like, so where we're at now with what dude's saying, I'm just going to kind of check this against what we already sort of know, or, you know, what we like have as our dogma in the religion, right? And so just think about it this way. So, like, let's just say hypothetically that the little prodigy Jesus, and some of these books are from the Nag Hammadi library, right? So they're gnostic texts. They're not going to find them in the KJV, so they can't possibly be credible, right? But anyway, how do I put this? If he actually did go, like, so you had the whole Herod with the firstborn, you know, up to 2 years old being slaughtered, and John the Baptist gets whisked away, and Jesus gets born and whisked away. And then, you know, the Bible mentions a few things about him as a kid, and he's like a prodigy with the rabbis, and then he disappears and he's out of the picture as far as the Bible is concerned until he's like, you know, 25 or 30 or whatever, right? But so how do you think that the Sanhedrin would react if one of their own, a prodigy who knew the Torah and probably the Talmud and a bunch of other stuff that like people shouldn't know, right? But how would they react? Do you think that they would bear false witness against him to Rome in order to get Duke killed? I mean, I think they might do something like that. And if dude that was teaching this stuff that's so heretical against, you know, the Sanhedrin or whatever, if he's such a heretic and such a demon, and yet he's healing people and doing all these miracles, and everybody loves him, you know, that's a problem for the faith, especially, you know, the Sanhedrin and the temple. They were making a lot of money off of those poor schmucks that were doing pilgrimages, right? So they had a good thing going. And I do believe that, you know, it would kind of make sense that this is the sort of reaction we would see when one of the boys, one of their own, was threatening their scam.
Bible. In 1 Kings 19, it says, "Then a voice said to him, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' He replied, 'I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too.' The Lord said to him, 'Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Elijah, son of Shaphat from Abel-Maholah, to succeed you as prophet.' So Elijah went from there and found Elijah, son of Shaphat. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elijah then ran after Elijah. 'Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye,' he said, 'and then I will come to you.' Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant."
Okay, just pausing that real quick, because when people start evoking Old Testament characters like Elijah, and I do get Eliza and Elijah confused, so forgive me if I pronounce the name wrong, but one of them too, and I think it's Elijah, was the one who beheaded 400 prophets of Baal basically in a sitting, right? And the reason that Elijah was given authority to do that was because God helped Elijah trick the prophets of Baal into a bet that they couldn't win, right? Basically. And, you know, to sit there and start likening Elijah to Yeshua, and a lot of people try to say that they're one and the same, like one's reincarnated. I just can't get on board with that, dude. I mean, maybe there's arguments that I'm missing, but, you know, for one of them to be beheading 400 people in a day, and the other one to be like putting people's ears back on that came to kill them, I don't think that's the same dude at all, bro. I mean, maybe the times were different or whatever, but I don't know. Not by much, really, if you think about it. And, you know, I don't know. I just don't get on board with a lot of the Old Testament connections that people make, because, see, in my opinion, this is a big part of the deception. Okay, so to take the gospel of Jesus, right? And let's just assume that the entire New Testament is 100% accurate. We won't even go questioning that right now. But let's say that's all true. To marry that with the Old Testament as if it is like a footnote or an afterthought or even a continuation of the same book, to me, is the biggest part of the deception. Okay, I mean, sure, there's lots of cases made for Yeshua fulfilling all of these Old Testament prophecies, and, you know, maybe that's true, but at the same time, it would be pretty easy for people writing a book to make sure that that happens, right? And so I know that like we don't want to get into the whole debate of questioning the authenticity of this book and that. I'm not going to go into that, but what I will say is that the New Testament is extremely suspect to me because the editor-in-chief of the thing was Paul Saul. And Paul Saul was not a disciple. He was not an apostle. He was a professional hunter-downer of Christians, bringing Christians to justice with a posse. That's what he did for a living. He rather enjoyed it. And by all accounts, he was rather prolific at it, like one of the best Christian hunters, right? Made a lot of money doing it, right? Probably racked up the tang too. You know what I mean? I'm kidding. I don't know. But, you know, the thing is with Paul Saul being the editor-in-chief of the gospel, the fact that he never knew Jesus, never met him, never supped with him, never had a drink with him, quite hated Christians, and worked directly for the Sanhedrin. You know, you can say what you want, but there is a working hypothesis that Paul was like a shill, okay? So anyway, not the point of this video.
Elijah, John the Baptist, was Jesus's guru in his former incarnation. In Matthew 17:5, it is written, "A bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, 'This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him.' When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, 'Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead.' The disciples asked him, 'If you are the prophet, why then did the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?' Jesus replied, 'To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already came, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands.' Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. Don't think for one moment that what Jesus attained is not attainable by you. In fact, Jesus himself said in John 14:11, 'Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the work themselves. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater works than these, because I am going to the Father.'"
Okay, just pausing that right there. You know, I think that there's something to this, and maybe it's not this specifically that we're about to get into, okay? But I do think that, so like after the resurrection, which I do believe was literally a real thing, okay? After that point, the world exploded with Christianity everywhere, right? After the resurrection. So something happened, okay? And, you know, if you believe, or at least if you humor, for argument's sake, the stories that are told in like the so-called gnostic texts, especially the Nag Hammadi library text, which I believe a lot of them are very legit. Others of that same library, not so legit. But you know, fuck, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Why do I always ramble, y'all? Fuck. But I think that there's something to this concept that, okay, if the apostles were actually doing miracles, you know, they were actively being hunted down by Rome and the Sanhedrin, and they were being killed and like mocked, ridiculed, hunted down. If they were caught with any books that were not the official books of Rome, then they would have their books burned. So there was a systematic, basically campaign that was, you know, funded by Rome and funded by the Sanhedrin to exterminate Christianity, right? But what they found was the more Christians that they killed, the more Christians they created, right? Because these Christians were willing to die for their beliefs, right? Because we know how people are willing to die for beliefs, right? But the thing is, you know, from a logistical standpoint, if every time you kill a Christian, you spring up 4 more in its place, it's not exactly a good strategy. And so, you know, what they did, and we're talking about the Roman Emperor Constantine at this point, was they just decided that they were going to become the official vicars of Christ on earth, and that's what we've got to this day. So in my opinion, anyone who puts a lot of credence into the claims and the dogmas of Rome and the Sanhedrin, the little lump in their throat is like their nose, right? That's how far up the well, anyway.
One mistake of the Christian religions is they deify Jesus and put him on a pedestal, when the reality is his teachings are what should be put on a pedestal. They say that Jesus was the Son of God and born to a virgin mother. How could we ever aspire to be like him? But Jesus was once just an ordinary man. What made Jesus so great was that he fully evolved his consciousness and became one of the greatest yogis the world has ever known. He was born perfect, not because he was the Son of God. We are all sons and daughters of God. He was born perfect because of the spiritual work he did in a prior incarnation as Elijah.
And see, I don't agree with that. I'm not sure, dude's making some pretty grandiose claims right there. I can't get on board with that myself. I think that's pretty far-fetched. And to say Elijah is did you even know what Elijah was up to? And, and I think it was even in the Book of Kings, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Deuteronomy, I can't remember. It was one of those Old Testament books where Elijah beheaded the 400 prophets of Baal. So I don't know. I don't know if I can get on board with that. And also, I am of the opinion that there are realms above and realms below, right? And so we are sort of in the proving ground in between the two, the threshing floor of the heavens. And I'm pretty well convinced that when Yeshua was crucified for no good reason, before he rose again, he was in Sheol. And there are some accounts of what happened in the same Nag Hammadi text. And so for these claims that, he was just a regular dude and, he wasn't born of a virgin, I don't know, man. But to say that he's reincarnated Elijah is taking it a bit too far. So again, a lot of these sort of claims here make me very uncomfortable too. And so I do tend to sort of shy away from adhering to this stuff because it doesn't really ring true with me. A lot of it doesn't, but some of it does. Okay. And so I try to separate this dude's opinions, right, which he presents as foregone facts. I try to separate his opinions from some of the other stuff that he's saying, because again, I do believe that there's something to this.
It is our destiny to become like Jesus. The kingdom of heaven resides equally in all people. The purpose of your incarnation on this earth.
I would just say, unless they're a goat, right? I mean, I think that there are some, unfortunately, and I know that, the nature versus nurture debate and everything, but unfortunately, I think that we do have a situation where you have sheeps and goats, and some people, unfortunately, I hate to say it, are just fucking evil, dude. And some people are just fucking evil, and I don't know. I hate to feel so cynical about that, and I used to be way more optimistic and give people the benefit of the doubt way more than I do now. And it's not like I'm jaded or anything. I do give people the benefit of the doubt, but it's fuck me once, that's it, dude. I have no fuse for bullshit anymore. And it's I've run into some real dirty dick evil motherfuckers in my time here, let me just say.
On this earth and Jesus's teachings is to enable you to obtain your Christ consciousness. We have been fed a lie that when we die, we will go to heaven or hell, depending on how we lived our life. This is not what Jesus taught. In Luke 17:20, it is written, "And when he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come, he answered them and said, The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, Lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." The kingdom of heaven is here and it is now. But as long as you are living through body consciousness, you are in hell. When you activate your kundalini and open up your chakras, perceiving the world through your third eye, you are in heaven or communing with the divine. When man loses his way, the divine sends down a prophet to help people find the path once again. Jesus did not have to endure the false duality of the body once again. He had his spiritual birth as Elijah, just as John the Baptist had his as Elijah. Both of these great
Again, so like some pretty grandiose claims, whatever, do with that what you will, falls. I mean,
great souls were once just like us, sinners, believing that they were the body. So do you want to practice a religion and worship the divine, or do you want to practice yoga like Jesus taught and experience the divine? They teach us in school that we evolved from monkeys, and then they tell us that only stupid people that have no understanding about science believe we were created. Yet when you understand the science of yoga, or more importantly, when you practice the science, you realize that your mind, thoughts, and 5 senses are creating this false paradigm that you are experiencing. The reality is that you are one with the divine right here and right now.
And I gotta say, man, like I actually quite agree with what dude just said there. Like that last bit, okay, maybe not everything, but that last bit to where, is like my first near-death experience. I was like 2. I choked on a strawberry at my grandparents' house and like died on the floor, and like Papu brought me back as soon as the dude with the ambulance walked in the door. So I was out a couple minutes, right? So like, I mean, I can't prove any of that to you, but I can attest to this concept that like our natural state is of spirit or like dream, right? And like the flesh is the illusion, right? I think that there's something to that, and it's like this matrix or this this illusion or this this simulation, as so many people like to call it. It is very persistent. But I think that there are ways that, we can sort of break through the illusion. And I definitely think meditation is one of them. So, as much as I disagree with this guy, there are bits and pieces of this that are like spot on, at least in my opinion.
Vibrations from your thoughts cause your consciousness to be entrapped by the body. Who amongst you believes that you can get some water, mix in a few minerals, strike it with lightning, and give birth to a living organism with consciousness? The more you study science, the more evident it is that we are designed by an intelligent force. If you want to call that force Allah, Ra, God, Krishna, or any other name, it shouldn't be a matter of contention.
To that point, and I think that this is so important, any group of people or like any race of people that claims that they've got the monopoly on God is a liar or like totally deceived. You know what I mean? Because newsflash, the creator, God, the Most High, he created everybody, dude, right? And so like I do truly believe that whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or black or white or whatever your race, color, or creed, we were all created by the same God. And I think for anyone to say that the religion that they grew up in is the right one because XYZ is a bit pretentious, right? And so from where I'm sitting, I at least have, in the last few years of my life here, at least tried to learn more about other people's viewpoints on this thing, because frankly, racism in religion, or like the concept that God is a racist, or the concept that God has a race of people that are his favorite, is absurd. Like that's just absolutely absurd to me. I would say that the Bene Elohim are God's favorite, and they come from all walks of life. Like there have been prophets of all continents and ages, right? Over the millennia. I don't think that there is any one single geographical location that has the monopoly on prophets or the monopoly on relationships with God, right? And I think that's exactly the sort of thing that Yeshua was teaching. Like anybody that tells you that they have the one true path to communicate with God is kind of fooling themselves, right?
The thought that somehow we miraculously came to be without a designer is like thinking you could send a tornado through a junkyard and somehow create a Boeing 747 that can think. In the beginning, there was God and God alone. And so everything is created out of the divine. The great Saint Yogananda stated that God consciousness.
Okay, so like the great saint, I don't know, dude, he kind of looks like, do you guys remember Conan the Destroyer? Conan the Barbarian, the one with James Earl Jones when he turns into a snake? For some reason, it just reminds me of that, but I'm not so sure what's so great or what's so saintly about dude Yogananda, but we will definitely hear what he has to say.
Consciousness equals human consciousness plus thought. Our thoughts cause our consciousness to vibrate at a different level than the divine creating body consciousness. This creates the duality or belief that we are separate from the divine. Be still and know that I am God.
You know, I think that there probably is something to that too. Now, I'm not the one here saying like, oh, just know that you are God and I am God and Barbara Streisand or whoever the hell she was is God. Right? No, I'm not saying that, but I do say, you know, and even Christians kind of have to agree that even their book that they swear by says that we were created in God's image, right? Now, I'm just not of the belief that the creator of all things, God, you know, has a physical body, you know, with like hair and two ears and stuff. I think when they say created in God's image, I think it means our consciousness, our spirit, right? That's what I think it's referring to. And so, you know, to say that we all have the spark of the divine within us, or the human experience is akin to the spark of the divine, trapped within the, you know, the trappings of the flesh, or caged. Shit, I'm knocking things over. Caged within the trappings of the flesh. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely get on board with that. And, you know, if you do kind of read between the lines in some of Yeshua's teachings, even in the approved dogma, some of what dude's saying actually kind of jives, right? And if you just sort of humor the hypothesis juxtaposed with what actually happened, or what we kind of believe happened in history, you know, it does kind of make some sense, is what I'm saying.
A good metaphor is God is like the ocean, and you are ocean water floating within him. Only you are encapsulated in a bottle. And so although you are floating in and surrounded by the divine, there is a separation that exists. Your body is like the bottle in the metaphor. Identifying yourself as the...
Okay, pausing it right there only because this picture right here. All right, so when I was 2, choked on strawberry, died for about a couple minutes. I don't know how long. But when I was out, it was so weird because, okay, so we were, all right, so we were sitting there watching TV. We had dinner, rice pilaf and lamb. And then we were watching something on TV in the living room with the lights off, and we all had ice cream. And so I'm sitting there eating ice cream, and I had a bite in my mouth, and I didn't know, but there was an entire whole strawberry frozen in that bite. And it was like a whole, like the whole bite was in my mouth, and it was way too much. But something on TV made me bust out laughing. I don't remember what it was, and I sucked it right down my windpipe, and it was just lodged right in there perfectly. And I'm like freaking out, and like I'm trying to yell, and nothing's coming out, and I can't breathe. And I stand up, and I'm like, that's all you can do. You can't do nothing but go, ah. And then my grandfather got up and started walking towards me. And then like, I felt like my head was going to explode, and all this pain just everywhere, like fighting for breath. And then I was just out. But like instantly, like I didn't go anywhere. It was just instantly, it was, do you see this image right here that we're looking at? It was exactly like that. Like I didn't have a body, right? But everything was like gray all around. It was almost like, you know, like the holding software when they're like in the Matrix one, when they go to the fucking loading platform or whatever, where they get their gats and stuff. But it was kind of like that. But like I didn't have a body. I was aware that I didn't have a body, but it wasn't at all strange that I didn't have a body. Okay, and this is all going through my mind, and I'm like 2, right? But I remember it like it was fucking today. You know what I mean? I'll never forget. But that I didn't see anything but gray, like just kind of like this gray, and I'm like trying to find my way around, and it was almost as if there was something bubbling me in from, you know, progressing, right? And I could hear distant singing of like maybe hymns, like female hymns being sung, right? And then the next thing I know, shit, sorry. The next thing I know, pain, dude, pain. And I'm like woken up from like, I don't know, the worst damn hangover you've ever had, but I was 2 and just pain, dude. Like I had broke ribs and like everything. And I was just, but okay, so backing up though, but when I was in this gray place, right? Place for lack of a better word, there was no pain, there was no fear. It was like great. It was like the best, right? It's like, um, I like our net like home, right? Like our natural place, like that felt normal, right? It's just kind of hard to explain, but so like ever since then, I've never really had any sort of fear of death, right? Me personally, but like some of like what this dude's saying, and of course what Yeshua was on about, definitely rings true with my experience. Now, like, can I prove any of this shit to y'all? No, like, fuck no. But I'll attest to it. You know, I have no reason to lie. You know what I mean? Like,
The body causes a feeling of separation, that what you desire, want, or need is outside of yourself. The reality is that everything you experience is nothing more than an electrical sensation picked up by the 5 senses and interpreted inside the body. You are always your own experience. With body consciousness, you are happy or sad depending on whether the mind likes the electrical sensations that are being sent to it. This is a foolish way to live, allowing the fickle mind to decide your emotions for you. The nature of the mind is
and not even the fickle mind to decide your emotions for you, but like devious, dubious advertisers trying to sell you shit you don't want, getting in your head, making your decisions for you a lot of times, right? But yeah, like totally, right? Absolutely.
of the mind is it is a desire-creating factory. Endless desires are
Yeah.
created, and you only achieve temporary reprieve when you satisfy a desire.
So I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but you know, if you don't like it, fucking lump it. So the last time I was in county jail, I mentioned it at the beginning of this stream, I think, right? But I read a book that was by Russell Brand. It was Freedom from Our Addictions was the name of the book. And one of the analogies, it's a great book. Like I really enjoyed it. I mean, again, you kind of have a different perspective when you're totally in jail and have nothing to do. Reading the books is way more fun than it normally is. You know what I mean? But so the analogy about seeking things outside of yourself was the musk antelope or like the musk deer or something. But so like there's in Africa or in like in Argentina, Australia, something, I don't know, one of the A countries, the countries that starts with an A, there's these deer or like antelope that they have this musk that is highly sought after by like perfume companies, right? So this musk deer, certain times a year, these companies, you know, these fragrance companies will go to great lengths to travel to where these musk antelopes or wherever the fuck they are, where these things like live, and they risk life and limb trying to, you know, collect this musk off of their butts. Okay. Now, the thing is about these musk creatures, I'm just going to call them musk deers, because I don't think it's antelope or something like that. So these musk deers, this musk that they produce on their backsides turns them on so much that it actually drives them to go and seek out the source of that musk, right? They don't know where it's coming from, but they like it and they're going to go find where that's coming from, right? Little do they know it's actually coming right from their hindquarters, but they will like climb up mountains and swim up streams and like risk life and limb to find that mate or, you know, find where that musk scent is coming from. But little did they know all they had to do was like look within. So like if you see the analogy, I kind of like that definitely applies to what dude was just saying. And I think that like, yeah, that also rings true for me. You know, the grand takeaway from that book, if you're curious, is that the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So, as highly socialized creatures, we humans long for and even cannot survive without connection. I've heard it rumored that a baby that never is touched by a person will like die pretty soon thereafter if they never have any human contact, right? So, as socialized creatures, we humans long for connection. And, you know, in a world with such plastic connections and, you know, cheap connections and money being so important to everybody, connections not so much, that addiction is almost a certainty for many people. Because without connection, we're going to look for avenues of like reward mechanisms and things like that. And, you know, a lot of people find drugs appealing for some reason. I don't know why.
Then the mind
Never
goes
did
quiet
understand
for a
that.
short amount of time, and you feel your true nature, which is love, peace, and bliss. Unfortunately for you, the mind makes you think that you feel these emotions because you satisfied one of its desires, when the reality is you finally feel your true nature that the mind blocks from you with its body consciousness and desires. When the mind starts up again, it attributes the brief moment of consciousness or bliss coming from an earthly experience, and thus the desire to experience this feeling again is created. All desires are actually a perversion to experience your true self, the divine within you. And soon after you satisfy a desire and achieve temporary bliss, another desire or demand is created by the mind, and thus the wild goose chase begins again. And we all know how this game ends because the body is a temporary shelter for the consciousness.
And I wonder if he's going to say the wage of sin is death. I just wonder.
Ultimately, bodily identification ends for everybody, no matter how gifted their physical life may be. It ends in the degeneration that old age brings. Jesus called the mind Satan. Satan, the devil, Lucifer, and hell are all metaphors. They don't exist. There is no
I love that they use the South Park meme for the image of the devil. I'm just going to mute my mic because my roommate says crank their van in. Okay, hold on.
opposite to God. This is from Matthew 16:21. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said, this shall never happen to you. Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Why do the Christian religions tell us that if we don't follow their nonsense, that when we die we will go to hell and be tormented by Satan for eternity? Jesus taught that body consciousness is hell, and our mind, or more specifically the emotional component of it, known as the ego, is the devil.
Let's see. Yeah, I just now realized I was muted. Okay, I think this is about where we were. If not, I'm sorry. Damn, dude. Wow. See, I have no way of seeing the chat while I'm doing this. And it's like, if I navigate away from what I'm doing to check the chat, my computer runs risk of crashing. So it is a bit precarious. Anyways, all right, let's go back on here. Fuck, man. Ooh, that burns me up. I'm going to stop muting myself ever again.
The Shishuma. But because we are born to sin and placed in a body that is not functioning properly, we have locks in our chakras that prevent this from happening. So instead of the electricity flowing up the central nervous system, or Shishuma, it alternates going up the parasympathetic nervous system. In yoga parlance, this is known as the Ida Nadi, and the sympathetic nervous system, Pingala Nadi. This again powers the right and left parts of the brain at different levels. You can tell which nadi is dominant by closing one nostril with your finger and trying to breathe through the other nostril.
And what I said there was all the coke heads that are watching right now don't even need to check that one, right?
Then close the opposite nostril and try to breathe through the other nostril. Normally, one nostril will be completely open and the other nostril will be somewhat closed. This picture clearly shows the flap of skin that cover the turbinate areas of the nostrils, directing which nadi most of the prana will flow. In his famous talk, known as Sermon on the Mount, Jesus spoke of a yoga technique that is used to balance the nadis and thus balance the pranic flow to the brain. This technique is known as Kachari Mudra. In Matthew 7,
Okay, so I think one of the things that I said that definitely I was just speaking without a microphone was that, while I don't get on board with everything that this dude is saying, I think a lot of it rings true. Honestly, there's no way that I'm going to be able to recreate the stuff that I spoke into the ether that y'all didn't hear. So I'm just gonna respond as I see fit. I'm not gonna try to reiterate what I already just did because I'll just never do it the same. So I do apologize. Hopefully it wasn't too long where I was speaking into the damn ether, but that's okay, man. Oh, and I think the other thing I said that I thought was funny was the way that dude said potato. I love that, man. I love it. Like, I want to get that patented, like, so that every time someone says potato, I get like a nickel falls out of the fucking, yeah.
7:13, Jesus says, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." This is another widely misinterpreted quote from the Bible that Yogananda explains in his book, The Second Coming of Christ. Yogananda writes, Jesus addressed.
Okay, and so the other thing was, okay, I'm not sure what is so great and what is so saintly about Yogananda. I don't know anything about these people, and so, like, when this guy makes these definite claims about things, I really take that with a grain of salt. But I think a big point that I wanted to sort of convey through this is that I defer to experts on certain things, right? To a degree. I'm not foolish with it, but this dude obviously who spent a lot of time to make this video feels passionately about this, and he has a worldview and a life experience that is quite different from my own. And I think that it is very important for us as Christians to not just reject information offhand because we've been trained to do that, right? Because for sure, we are definitely missing decades of Yeshua's life from the official dogma Bible, right? So like it goes from the time when he was a little kid, teaching the rabbis the definition of letters, and then at some point he's off somewhere. Like the book just picks up his life 20 years later when he is doing the first baptism with John the Baptist, right? And so there is this sort of big question mark in terms of what was dude doing for those 20 years, and for some reason that's all been covered up. And I think it's so important that I reiterate this because it may have been to the ether that the Catholic Church and the Sanhedrin went to great length and expense to first kill Yeshua and then hunt after his apostles. And then when he resurrected, we had this huge explosion of Christianity all over the world, okay? And for Rome and for the Sanhedrin, that was a big problem, right? And what they started doing was just killing Christians, right? People that were openly or secretly Christian, if they were caught being Christian, or maybe even like accused of being Christian, wrongfully so, they would just like summarily kill them, right? But what Rome sort of figured out is like logistically, it wasn't really doable, this model that they had, because, for every Christian that they killed, 4 more would pop up in their place, right? The whole martyr effect. And so logistically, that's not really doable from Rome's standpoint. And so they sort of officially became the official vicars of Christianity on the earth. And anyone else who said otherwise was deemed as a heretic. And summarily, brought to justice. Okay. And I'll just pose the question to the chat. Was I speaking to the ether when I was talking about Paul Saul before, or did y'all catch that? If you could let me know, because I don't want to repeat myself about Paul Saul, but if y'all didn't hear me say anything about Paul Saul, then I gotta touch on that again. So if y'all could let me know in the chat, and I'm just gonna take a break here until I get an answer. I'm holding y'all hostage till I get an answer. And I will go over to actual YouTube, because there's just like a huge problem with me trying to do chat from Riverside for some reason. Okay, terrific. Okay, cool. So you caught that part about Paul Saul. Okay, great. So at least I don't have to repeat myself on that one. Excellent. Okay. Well, and I'm never muting myself again. That is something that I dread doing that, and I fucking do it like every time. Okay, we're back to it then.
Addressed his close disciples in a veiled metaphor. The straight gate and narrow way refer to the gateway in the subtle astral center at the base of the spine, which opens into the astral spine's narrow, extremely fine pathway through which the life and consciousness ascend to the higher cerebral spinal centers of spiritual perception, the sole path to realization of God and union with Him. The great Saint Ramakrishna said, "When the divine goddess comes up, the tongue rolls back." Jesus and these great saints are talking about Kachari Mudra. This is Kachari Mudra. When your tongue is resting in your mouth, it is in the wide gate, but when you place it up...
So I guess, sorry, again, y'all have already heard this part once, so it's not like I'm interrupting something that you haven't seen, but like, I think one of the things that I was saying before is this is all very bizarre to me too, but there are some kind of eerie nuggets of truth or things that seem to ring true. And, I think that we would just be doing ourselves a disservice if we rejected these sorts of lines of inquiry or these sorts of lines of thought, because you will never, ever expand your horizons or get to know certain people better by just sticking to your echo chambers and sticking to the dogma that was presented to us by these, these outwardly pious, actually ravenous men, the whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones thing, so anyway, back at Atui.
When you place it up your nasopharynx, you go in through the straight gate and ultimately through the narrow passageway up to the 10th gate. Sexually, you are one half of a whole, but spiritually, you are complete. You have both a phallus, your tongue, and a yoni, your nasal.
I mean, I guess that is true. Maybe the transgenders could use that as an argument, couldn't they, right? So even though we are all each one, or the other sex, usually, unless you're talking about hermaphrodite or something, right? But we all do have a nasal pharynx and we all do have a tongue. So I don't know. Again, I'm not agreeing with Dude on this. That's just, so the claims here are weird, But again, here's what I'm submitting here. So hypothetically, if what Dude's saying is true, then who's the weirdo, right? Because if what he's saying is true, then you're calling Jesus a weirdo. So some Christian are you, right? I mean, hypothetically. Okay. Again, I'm not saying that this is true. What I'm saying is if it is true, then rejecting this information offhand because it's weird means that you're rejecting Jesus because you think Jesus is weird, hypothetically.
Your nasopharynx. This is what Jesus referred to when he spoke about the bridal chamber from the Gospel of Philip. For the Father anointed the Son, and the Son anointed the apostles, and the apostles anoint us. He who has been anointed possesses everything. He possesses the resurrection, the light, the cross, the Holy Spirit. The Father gave him this in the bridal chamber. He merely accepted the gift. The Father was in the Son, and the Son in the Father. This is the kingdom of heaven. Those who are separated will unite and will be filled. Everyone who will enter the bridal chamber will kindle the light. The purpose of a mudra is to redirect the energy flows in the body. The reason Kachari mudra is known as the king of all mudras is because of the benefit it bestows. Number 1, the ability to stop the breath or go breathless, which quiets the mind considerably. Number 2, it completes the electric circuit. It attaches the spine to the brain. Number 3, allows the sadhaka to balance the nadis, which then makes the electricity of the body go up the sushumna or Brahma.
So wait a minute, y'all. Were we like way ahead of this? Let me go back to the chat because it seems like I know we've seen this before. Like, am I supposed to be like way ahead of this? I'm so sorry, you guys. Awkward person, you here? What's up? What's up? What's up? Marve 2.2. In a way, it's a breath escapement. Well, I'll be real honest with you again. I never got very adept into any form of yoga, but I have over the years practiced certain breathing exercises that my aunt taught me when I was a kid because they really are very helpful for a lot of different things, like help you get to sleep or, I mean, I don't know, but we're just talking about breathing properly. I don't do recite mantras. I really don't meditate. I mean, I do stretch and sometimes I'll do some calisthenics, but you know, in terms of like, I'm not really into yoga. I mean, in case anyone's out there wondering, I'm really not. The extent of it is like my aunt taught me one time when I was a kid how to do this sort of breathing exercises where, I mean, I could walk anyone through it if anyone was curious. I'm not going to do that right now, but basically it involves like breathing in and flowing different colors through you as you breathe. And it's actually very therapeutic. And again, even without any sort of reciting mantras or changing one's philosophy or beliefs in God or anything, just in breathing properly, people will attack you and say, that's demonic. Oh, that's demonic. Really? Fucking breathing properly is demonic? Dude, I say your ass is demonic, honestly. You know, just say it. Anybody who's going to reject something so simple as breathing properly because it is sort of adjacent to an evil religion that isn't your religion, I don't know, that is so xenophobic, and I think that goes against pretty much everything that Yeshua was actually all about, whether you believe any of this yoga stuff or not. Awkward person one time. Okay, so we'll just go back to it. I mean, if you guys don't mind reiterating the stuff that we already saw, I would probably just mess it up if I tried to fast forward it to another spot. So right back to it, y'all. Right back to it.
Brahma nadi. Number 4, allows the sadhaka to rub a nerve center, which leads to dharana, or one-pointedness of mind. Number 5, turns on your kundalini or opens up the knot at Muladhara chakra. Number 6, allows the sadhaka to push on a nerve center, shutting off all sensory perception. Number 7, allows the sadhaka to drink from the fountain of youth, or King Arthur's Holy Grail.
So the King Arthur's Holy Grail part is the part that, and I know, get your minds like out of where, I know where y'all are going to go with it, is the part that really fascinates me because, and we're going to get to this and he's going to tell you exactly what, but he's talking about DMT, or like there's these 2 different glands that when agitated that are like right by your pineal gland, when these like bones or glands are agitated, each one of them excretes each one of these glands excretes a slightly different, each one of these glands excretes a different chemical, and when they combine together, they create this really, really potent DMT solution, right? And this isn't hyperbole. This isn't like a theory. This is like, these people are doing this on a regular basis, and even like sort of exercises that you can do to like strive towards what those weirdos were doing with their tongues, like even just like sort of exercises along those lines actually have some really interesting sort of psychoactive effects, if you will.
Absorption of the liquid the brain makes, which is also known as ayahuasca, amrit, or DMT with the tongue, separates the consciousness from the mind. This is the land of milk and honey. Now that is quite a list there, so let's talk about them one at a time. Number one, Kachari Mudra gives you the ability to stop the breath or go breathless, which quiets the mind considerably. The ability to go breathless or stop the breath. That is impossible, you say. Someone would die if they stopped breathing. Do you believe you were breathing when you were a baby in your mother's tummy? That is different, you say, because your mother was supplying you with oxygen. Would it surprise you to know that the air you breathe in is 21% oxygen and the air you breathe out is 17% oxygen? Plus you are breathing out oxygen in the form of CO2. If oxygen was so important, why are you breathing so much of it out? Have you ever noticed that when you swim?
Now, of course, I know Pete and Peter are going to have like qualms with that. Love Pete and Peter, by the way. But okay, so not jumping on board with all that, but I think there is something to that, right? You know, regardless of what you believe oxygen to be, why is it that okay when you breathe in, it's like what 20% oxygen, and after your lungs process that, you breathe out 17% oxygen. So like if that oxygen was so important, why is your body so inefficient at gathering it? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's medical excuses for it, right? Scientific excuses for it, but it is an interesting sort of question, I think.
Swim underwater for a minute or so and then come up for breath, the first thing that you do is exhale. You don't inhale first, you exhale.
Yeah, you really do. Like if you've been holding
the body is more concerned with getting the carbon out of the body than it is getting oxygen in. The great yogi Shivananda, who was also a medical doctor, taught that we inhale to get the prana, or electricity from the outside air, into our lungs so it can be distributed to the body.
Okay. So another bit that I'm pretty sure that I was uttering to the ether when I had my mic muted, sorry, had to do with the magnetic field of the heart. Okay. So the magnetic field of the heart, if you go and ask a medical doctor, where is the electricity in the body generated, right? He's going to say it's generated in the heart, because if you do like a magnetic scan of a body, the magnetic field is centered right around the heart, right? But the thing is like, okay, you can create electromagnetic relationships or generate a magnetic field by like taking a magnet and a coil around that and like spinning either the coil or the magnet independently of one another. That'll create electricity. Or you can like take certain kinds of metal and put them in acid, house another metal and make a battery, and that kind of generates electricity, right? But in terms of, forcing liquid through a meat pump, like the concept that generates electricity somehow or a magnetic field is kind of absurd to me too. And when we realize from the sort of new cosmology perspective, the true earth perspective, that the earth is basically a big free energy device, what this dude is breaking down here about the prana and whatnot is actually very, very pertinent to a lot of discussions that we've been having over the last decade, isn't it?
If you think about our breathing apparatus, you notice at the top of it we exhale and inhale from a Y, with the mouth and the nasal passage being the top of the Y and the lungs being the bottom. The vacuum, followed by pressure from the diaphragm contracting and then relaxing, causes the breath to be turbulent, mixing up the outgoing and incoming air. This turbulence creates an environment that is very inefficient in its flow to dispose the toxic air, carbon dioxide, and get what is needed into the body, prana and oxygen. This causes a lot of unnecessary work for the body. When the breath stops, carbon dioxide forms a stream that peacefully slides out of the body. A straight spine with the chin slightly pulled in enables this stream to form much quicker. Just a cursory glance at a nasal diagram and you can see that the passageways are set up to separate the incoming from the outgoing air. This can easily be verified by a 10-second experiment. Pay attention to where the air is coming from when you exhale and where the air is going when you inhale. The exhales are coming from the upper chamber of the nose where the carbon dioxide accumulates, and the inhales are going into the lower chambers of the nose. Of course, the divine designed us so that when the diaphragm stops contracting, the carbon dioxide forms a peaceful stream and exits the body on its own. When the tongue blocks...
That is so important, and it is true. So what dude's saying right there is 100% true. It's not like some claim. It's like, so like, I guess what my point is there, the dude certainly isn't blowing everything out of his ass. Like, the dude does have some actually definitely valid points, okay? So like, even if we're, I don't know, like I am probably too hypercritical, so I'll just shut up, but enough said.
The tongue blocks off the outgoing air from entering the mouth. The air cannot stimulate the nerves at the roof of the mouth that send an electrical signal to the diaphragm to contract. Kachari Mudra ends the gift of breath that you were given at birth when the amniotic fluid was forced out of your lungs by the doctor who turned you over and patted you on the back. Number 2, completes the electric circuit. Kachari Mudra attaches the spine to the brain. There is a gap between your spinal column and the brain. This gap is bridged by what is called the brainstem and can easily be seen in this picture. We have all heard that we utilize a small fraction of our brain. This concept is misunderstood by many people. You do use 100% of your brain. It's just that the mind only has the capacity or capability to use a small portion of it at one time. Whereas when you can transcend the mind, you could then utilize 100% of your brain at the same time. This has been demonstrated by scientific experiments monitoring yogis in deep meditation called samadhi. When you take into consideration that every one of our 100 billion neurons may be connected to 10,000 other neurons, sending information through synaptic connections, it doesn't take much literacy in mathematics to understand that the capability of utilizing 100% of the brain is not a tenfold increase in comprehension over utilizing.
Not a 10% increase, but an exponential one. I will be right back, you guys. I've got to go and use the bathroom. Give me 1 minute, and I'll be right back. Grab you a drink. One love. Okay, y'all. Little Lily's got to go out too. So if y'all don't mind hanging, I'm gonna leave this stream live, and I'm just gonna go walk Lily real quick. Again, I walked her right before I went, but she's got bladder problems sometimes. So I gotta walk her, and I'll be right back. So y'all sit tight, and I'm just going to leave this. We're at 35:37. I don't have an ink pen. Here we go. 35:37 on this, and I'll just run dog cam, and we will mute it. There we go. Okay, let me just run that on a loop while I go and walk Lily. It's very cold outside, so she's usually pretty quick, but I apologize. Nothing I can do. What's that, Jill? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, guys, I'll be right back. Give me about 10 minutes and I'm gonna leave this thing running. So just enjoy some high altitude weather balloon footage for a minute. Come on, Boogaloo, let's go. Come on, Boogaloo. Lily, say hi to the stream. Everyone say hey to Lily. Oh, she's too black to show up on camera. Yeah. Oh, she is really dark, ain't she? Yeah, she doesn't show up very well. Poor baby. All right, I'll be right back, y'all. Nina, can you please give her something to eat? When you get done, can you feed the dog? Okay, thank you. You sit tight, little. I'll just do it. You get done. All right, all right, all right. Sorry about that, y'all. You know how little Boogaloo Scrimp is. She just got the bladder the size of a pea or something. I don't know. Okay. 35-37, we said, right?
The reason Jesus spoke in parables, whereas when you can the electricity and burns up the friend, whereas when you can transcend the mind, you could then utilize 100% of your brain at the same time. This has been demonstrated by scientific experiments monitoring yogis in deep meditation called samadhi.
Okay, so again, we can forgive the likely misuse of the term scientific experiment, but I could be wrong. I mean, there is a pretty stringent definition of a scientific experiment. And so anytime someone claims that something is a scientific experiment without any sort of, I don't know, documentation of the experiment, I don't know, man. It's hard to get on board with that. But again, we were all, everybody is sort of guilty of this. Our culture is one where science is evoked for all sorts of things where it probably shouldn't. So it's forgivable. Okay. Again, it is an argument in semantics, but the stolen valor of science is a big problem. So it's not like we're just being anal about it for no reason, right? Indeed.
Samadhi. When you take into consideration that every one of our 100 billion neurons may be connected to 10,000 other neurons, sending information through synaptic connections, it doesn't take much literacy in mathematics to understand that the capability of utilizing 100% of the brain is not a tenfold increase in comprehension over utilizing 10% of the brain, but an exponential one.
Yeah.
This sounds all great and everything.
I mean, I'm not sure if you could prove that, going into a meditative state where you disconnect from your sensory inputs and then imaging the synapses is necessarily proof that you're using 100% of your brain at the same time. But that is kind of wild. Like if what dude's saying is true, and I haven't looked into the studies that he's referring to, but it is exactly those sorts of studies that are buried by the likes of the Jesuits, ain't it?
But what exactly does transcending the mind mean? You must shut down everything that is powering it up. This includes all sensory perception, your breathing apparatus, circulatory system, and digestive system. Be still and know that I am God. Looking at the picture, you can clearly see that there is a gap in the spinal column that is bridged by the lower brain, sometimes known as the reptilian brain, that is...
Okay, hold on. You know what, man? I'm going to put this on full screen. I think it will... I think that will be bigger for y'all. I don't know. Hopefully that's better.
Reptilian brain that is only concerned with fight or flight, survival and procreation, food, sex, and wanting to be the biggest, brightest peacock in the world. This is where our ego and desires come from. Everybody wants to be Chief Big Feather with all the adornments, and these desires will continue as long as the electricity is flowing through this brainstem. With the practice of Kachari Mudra, the tongue acts like a fuse and redirects the electricity of the body from the medulla oblongata to the pineal gland. You can see from this picture the results from diverting this electrical flow. The uvula conducts the electricity and burns up the frenulum, which is the ligament that binds the tongue to the bottom of the mouth. You can clearly see the hard white scabs that appeared underneath my tongue from the practice of Kachari Mudra. The burning up of the frenulum allowed my tongue to go further and further up the nasal pharynx and eventually opened up my Vishuddha chakra.
Okay, so just for the record, to me, that's kind of crazy, dude, right? Like, way far out there. But, you know, I don't know, man. Like, there definitely appears to be some kind of a method or a logic to this madness. I mean, I don't know, man. Keep going.
The goal of yoga is to connect the consciousness or anahata chakra to the ajna chakra through the Brahma Nadi, which runs right up the center of the Sushumna. In English, this is known as...
With a side of pierogies.
This is known as the central nervous system. This connects your soul with your Christ consciousness, which will then allow you to tap into the cosmic consciousness. You don't want the electricity to flow through the medulla oblongata because that brings about body consciousness, or as Jesus put it, you serve mammon.
Okay, so here's another bit that I definitely was speaking into the ether. Okay, so the bit about, so he's mentioning body consciousness as if that's a bad thing, right? So simply, you know, the electricity running through your medulla oblongata is basically causing your, you know, your rational waking mind to remain online, right? So that sort of body awareness is a negative connotation in terms of the way he's describing it, right? But like, what happens when you take that body awareness to like the uber extreme, like bizarro to the umpteenth 2024, right? And that is like, so we're talking about the poor kids that have this sort of body dysphoria or gender dysmorphia or whatever it is, to where we're not just talking about body conscious, which is, you know, according to this sort of philosophy, a sin, right? What about being so caught up with your body consciousness that you're like, I don't know. It's just so bizarre to me, the hill that these youngins want to die on, right? For, you know, hypothetically or metaphorically speaking, right? But then again, I would also argue that these sort of thoughts are probably not their own, right? So we have all allowed our children to be mind manipulated by Helly Weird and the likes of them, right? By plopping them down in front of the TV, putting on a Disney flick, and, you know, roll that damn Little Mermaid till the wheels fall off, right? But, you know, that has more and more become the sort of babysitter, guide, and teacher of our youngins. And so it really is no surprise that these youngins are growing up with extreme examples of body consciousness, gender dysphoria, and on and on and on and on, right? So, like, so if body consciousness is a sin, we're all already in hell, right?
You want the electricity to flow through the tongue right to the pituitary gland. This is a multi-stage process. The nadis must be opened, balanced, and cleared. Slowly over time, the Sushumna is able to carry an increasingly load of electricity. When the electricity gets strong enough, chakras open, and the tongue eventually busts through the 10th gate, allowing you to drink from the Holy Grail or taste the Amrita. When the pituitary gland is stimulated with this electricity, copious amounts of this nectar is produced. When this nectar makes it into the bloodstream, samadhi takes place. This nectar anesthetizes the brainstem. A powered-down brainstem would explain the near-death experiences that people have had where their heart stopped and they experienced peace, love, warmth, felt the presence of the divine.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, did y'all get the part that I was talking about my near-death experience as a 2-year-old? Because if not, then I gotta tell that bit again. So please, I'm gonna check the chat right now. I kind of went into depth as to what happened when I was 2, when I choked on a strawberry at my grandparents' house. So do I need to go over that again? If you can, let me know if we actually got that. Let me refresh this and just see if that helps. Dragon, dude. Sorry, y'all. I'm like over here trying to get back into the chat. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I guess not. So whatever. It's not that important. I don't reckon.
Fine, etc. What happened to them is their body really did die, and the electricity stopped flowing to the brainstem. When their heart started back up again, sensory perceptions returned, sending electricity back to the brainstem, and body consciousness returned. For a brief amount of time, they experienced what yogis experience in samadhi when they divert the electricity from the lower brainstem, stimulating the pituitary and pineal gland to produce the Amrita. A Wikipedia search on parts of the brain reveals the following information. The medulla oblongata is the lower half of the brainstem that connects the higher levels of the brain to the spinal cord, the upper half being the pons. The medulla contains the cardiac, respiratory, and vasomotor centers and deals with autonomic and voluntary functions, such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The pons is part of the brainstem that links the medulla oblongata and the thalamus. The pons contains nuclei that relays signals from the forebrain to the cerebellum, along with nuclei that deal primarily with sleep, respiration, swallowing, bladder control, hearing, equilibrium, taste, eye movement, facial expressions, facial sensations, and posture. The thalamus is perched on top of the brainstem, right above the pons, near the center of the brain, with nerve fibers projecting out to the cerebral cortex in all directions. The thalamus has multiple functions. It may be thought of as kind of a switchboard of information. It is generally believed to act as a relay between a variety of subcortical areas and the cerebral cortex. In particular, every sensory system includes a thalamic nucleus that receives sensory signals and sends them to the associated primal cortical area. The thymus would still be active in stage 4 of Kachari, just receiving electricity from the tongue instead of the senses. Notice that the brainstem is all about the senses, respiration, and circulation, the very things we are supposed to shut down to reach Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
Okay, so basically what he's saying there is kind of interesting, right? So it's basically like rewiring the connection from your spinal cord and the way that it connects to your brain, right? And so what he's saying is it basically bypasses the part of your brain that is like, I don't know, anchoring you to the physical body, right? It's really fascinating. It's like, again, I don't know why this, even just looking at this sort of information scares like Christians so much. I mean, I do know why. It's because of the programming from the church. That's what it is.
samadhi. When the breath shuts down,
Again, I'm not subscribing to any of this stuff necessarily, but I do find it fascinating, and bits and pieces of it really do seem to ring true for me. And again, if I'm going to check it again, but if y'all didn't get my reiteration, sort of detailed iteration of my near-death experience when I was a kid, let me know and I'll say it. Because there was a time there when I was muted, and I'm not sure how long that was for. Okay. Anywho, back to it, yo.
Part of the mind shuts down. When the breath stops, the time-based reality stops. Thinking about the past and the future happens only when you make a concerted effort to focus on it. When you can shut off the senses, you make it to samadhi, or the void. When you raise the kundalini through the brahmanadi, with the energy going to the sahasrara, enlightenment takes place. The key is directing where and how the electricity flows in your body. From the book Mijda, a book about the early life of Yogananda. During the practice of Kriya, the prana, and therefore the mind or consciousness, withdraws from the senses and pierces the cerebral spinal chakras as it's drawn upward and becomes settled at the top of the sushumna. Through the performance of Kachari Mudra, that divine life current draws the prana from the senses into the spine and directs it up through the chakras to the universal spirit, uniting the consciousness with spirit. The entire body is thereby spiritualized and energized. As a result, a perceptible glow may emanate from the body. The goal of yoga is to bypass the brainstem or transcend the mind. Basically, what Jesus was saying in Matthew 6:22 is that the electricity in the body can flow or take one of two paths, heaven or hell. When thine eye is single, other interpretations say clear or good, the electricity flows to the Ajna chakra, or third eye, and when the electricity flows through the brainstem, you see through your physical eyes. One path gives you body consciousness, the other gives you God consciousness. Number 3, Kachari.
Okay, and again, so like this concept of God consciousness, like, you know, I can't really get on board with that sort of vernacular, right? But I don't take offense to it. And I think, you know, again, in case it wasn't iterated properly before, like, I think that any race or group of people that claims that they have like the monopoly on God, right? Or like if anyone who believes that God favors one race of people or one color of people, or like, I don't know, left-handed people over anyone else, I think is kind of ridiculous. I do believe that we have sort of a sheeps and goats sort of situation going on in the world where, like, you know, you definitely have your good witches and your bad witches, if you want to pardon the Wizard of Oz, incantation or whatever. I don't know, man. Back to it.
Kachari Mudra allows the Sadhaka to balance the nadis, which then makes the electricity of the body go up the Sushumna, or Brahma Nadi. Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, "If two make peace with each other in this one house, they will say to the mountain, 'Move away,' and it will move away." As I spoke about earlier, you have 3 main nadis where the electricity flows in your body. The central nervous system, in yoga parlance, this
Lottie-dottie, we likes to party.
This is known as the Sushumna. The parasympathetic nervous system, or Ida Nadi, and the sympathetic nervous system, or Pingala Nadi. When you have a sensory experience, the electricity flows through 2 different systems in the body, both the parasympathetic nervous system, Ida, and the sympathetic nervous system, Pingala. The Ida Nadi is responsible for telling you what you are experiencing.
You know, if just breaking from this a minute, if what he's saying is true, so like if the ancient yogic traditions have equivalents of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems explained in their doctrines or whatever, to me that's pretty damn interesting, right? And again, anyone who wants to label me like anything other than just a curious person, because of discussing this, can just go, I can tell you where to stick it.
you are experiencing. The Pingala Nadi is responsible for the fight or flight response, and so it can't waste time trying to figure out what it is you are experiencing, because it could possibly be life-threatening. The Pingala puts the electrical sensation through the catalog of sensations that you've already experienced, and if deemed to be threatening, immediately takes the appropriate bodily response. It is the reconciliation of these two signals that come in from the same experience that causes thought or vibration. Think about how your body reacts when it hears a loud noise. There are two reactions. One primes the body for action while waiting for instructions. If there is pain involved,
And you get that free ride from the adrenaline rush too, right? Like, if I don't know if you've ever like had something really important that you're carrying, and then like, I don't know, it's hot and you have to like let it go or something, or you have to hold on to it. I don't know, you get that adrenaline rush. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. So like your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system anyway. But if the connection that he's drawing is legitimate, that to me that's very interesting, that because this is ancient knowledge, right? Coming from, obviously from Hinduism or whatever. Or I don't know, I probably got the terminology wrong there too. I don't know.
there's pain involved, such as touching a hot stove, the sympathetic nervous system withdraws from the source before getting instructions from the parasympathetic nervous system. As long as the Ajna chakra is not open, you will experience the world through these two systems that bring about body consciousness. As long as the energy is predominantly traveling through the Ida or Pingala Nadi, your brain is imbalanced, and you will remain in body consciousness. The breath brings prana into the body, causing this imbalance. As I spoke about earlier, Swami Shivananda taught that we don't breathe for the oxygen in the air, we breathe for the prana, or to get the electricity in the air into our lungs. The body places a positive charge to all the prana that you breathe in through your right nostril, and a negative charge to all the prana that you breathe in through your left nostril.
I would say citations needed on these such claims, but if true, fascinating yet again. And, and I'm talking about the claims about the nostrils. Now, in terms of breathing in the prana and sort of harvesting the free energy from the world itself, that doesn't seem too far-fetched from where I'm sitting, honestly. Like, it makes way more sense to me than the meat pump that has fluid going through it, is somehow generating an electromagnetic field. But what if that's true? Like, what if what Stu's saying is true, to where no, you're actually breathing in, and maybe even like, all the little hairs or whatever are, tapping into this sort of free energy that the earth, the free energy device that the earth is, right? So like, just to give you an example, if you look at a Tesla tower, or like Gothic cathedrals that are suspected as sort of this antiquitech, harvesting of free energy, you sort of have this concept of, the higher up the tower is, the more potent the static electric potential is, right? And so when you compare that to things like trees, and how trees are, we're told that they get their energy from the sun and from photosynthesis. But isn't it kind of interesting that trees are very much set up like Tesla towers, right? I mean, sure, their roots aren't copper and their leaves aren't, a Tesla coil, but there are similarities, and there are electrical signals that are measurably coming from plants, right? And in fact, there was a dude in the 70s, I think, that did studies on plants where, so like what he did was he hooked up little electric nodes into living celery stalks, I think it was. And he had like 3 planters in his office with living celery stalks growing in the 3 planters, right? And what dude did was one day he came into the office, and again, he's got little electrodes hooked up to all these plants. And he come into the office and started cussing out the one plant, I think, and basically took a machete or like a knife to it and just hacked it to bits violently, so right in front of these other plants. And when he did this, right, these other plants that had the electrical nodes hooked to them started like going off, dude. Like the plants were freaking out, like measurably in terms of their electrical signals that they were giving off, right? And not only did they react to him, violently killing their brother plant or whatever, but also like he'd leave and other human beings would like enter the office and do like little mundane tasks or whatever. But anytime the dude that, that was doing this experiment or whatever, or plant torture activity, but the dude that did that to their brother plant, anytime he would come into the room, they would start freaking out again. So like they knew who he was and they remembered him, would be, like one way to interpolate that data. So, this concept of plants and even us, we creatures, having these electrical, connectivity throughout our body and our synapses, and the fact that the earth itself is a free energy generating device. In my opinion, it really isn't a huge leap that, the meat pump heart isn't generating electricity, that we too are sort of harvesting the prana or harvesting the static electric charge of the earth, if you want to get technical about the vernacular.
Positive prana powers up the sympathetic nervous system, or the Pingala Nadi in yogic terms, and the negative prana powers up the parasympathetic nervous system, or Ida Nadi. This prana travels down to the Muladhara chakra, and then depending on which nadi is currently dominant, starts spinning the chakras to the right or to the left, depending on which nostril is currently providing the majority of the air.
Okay. Sorry, and I'm not really refuting or responding to anything that dude just said there, like whatever you want to make of that. But what this does sort of summon in me is an experience that I had when I was a long time ago. I had a client, and that client they produce medical devices. And the medical device is what's known as magnetic resonance therapy, Mr. T. Now, it is similar to MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging, and we all know about MRIs, and they are widely used in hospital settings and stuff. But MRTs, Mr. T's, they hate to fly. No, I'm kidding. But the the magnetic resonance therapy is what it sounds like. So, like for different kinds of ailments, you can undergo this magnetic resonance therapy. Although it is very much shunned by the very lucrative medical community, who does definitely have a vested interest in keeping people unwell. It's very profitable to have a bunch of unwell people. And so when the medical community, or like the official medicaldom, begins rejecting things offhand as quackery, things like Rife machines and like magnetic resonance therapy, there are always chiropractors who will fill that void. Okay. And so with the company that I work for selling magnetic resonance therapy devices, we dealt strictly with chiropractors' offices. But, if you believe the sort of pitch that I was trained on to work for that company as a sort of third-party freelancer, you have to learn a lot about it in order to talk to doctors about it, right? So I got to know a lot about magnetic resonance therapy in that sort of vocational application. And I got to tell you, it is pretty convincing, like not the jargon that they, spill, but the testimonials of real people that have allegedly, apparently had really profound, phenomenal experiences from magnetic resonance therapy, right? I had never used it. I never actually saw one of the machines in person, but I think there's something to that. Like we are definitely, all life forms are definitely, electromagnetic beings, right? So I think there may be something to some of this nonsense, right? The feast of nonsense does have nuggets of truth in it, does it not?
When the polarity of the body switches and the nostrils alternate their dominance, The rotation of the chakra first slows down, stops, and then changes direction of its spin. In yogic terms, it is not important which direction the chakras are spinning, because as long as the chakras spin, the prana is being used to experience the external world. When you balance the polarity long enough so that the Muladhara chakra stops spinning, the chakra opens and the prana starts traveling up the central nervous system. This internalizes your consciousness and your spiritual journey begins. The practice of a breathing technique known as nadi shodhana, anuloma viloma, or alternate nostril breathing brings about a balance of the Ida nadi and Pingala nadi so that the electricity starts flowing up the Sushumna. When the nadis are balanced, the nostrils open up and dilate. Many people have practiced this breathing technique in yoga classes, using the fingers to close.
Personally, I've never heard of this sort of thing, never done it, not interested in it really, but I'm not going to knock it. Like, I'm not going to say it's evil or, a waste of time because I've never tried it. I know nothing about it. Some of this stuff sounds a little pseudoscientific and strange to me, but, who am I to say anything other than I don't know nothing much about it, really.
Fingers to close off the nostrils is cumbersome and distracting, whereas using the tongue internally to do this takes a lot less effort. This is achieved by sticking the tongue up the nasal pharynx and up one of the nostrils, sealing it off like a cork in a bottle. The inner...
I love how flippantly he says, just stick the tongue up the posterior nasal cavity, right? Like, I mean, you can try, dude. But I mean, dude's got his, what did he call it? His fibia fused or whatever. I mean, naturally so, but wow. Yo. Yeah, we're getting there. Almost. We're getting there. Yep.
The inner ears that cover the Eustachian tubes are physiologically designed to help you turn your tongue sideways so it can slide up the turbinate area of your nostril to the 10th gate. Gachari Mudra also gives you the added benefit of the next topic, which is number 4, allows the sadhaka to rub a nerve center, which leads to dharana, or one-pointedness of mind. At the top of your nasal septum is a bundle of nerves. When the tongue touches this area, you can feel the electricity flowing through the tongue. The uvula is actually a transformer and uses this electricity to burn up the rest of the frenulum, allowing your tongue to go deeper into Kachari. Most people have a hard time meditating because the mind and the 5 senses act as telephones, constantly ringing, demanding your attention. When the tongue makes a connection with the top of the nasal septum, a buzz is felt that is almost sexual in nature. Everybody has had the tingly feeling that you feel when you are about to sneeze, but for some reason you can't quite sneeze.
Oh, sometimes it just feels so great, dude. And like, can't you hate it when like you're about to sneeze and you're about to get that like buzz in your face or whatever that is, and then like, I don't know what it is, like the demon on your left shoulder cock blocks you or whatever, and you don't get that sneeze. It's almost like a, I don't know, fucking prom night gone wrong or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, sneeze. Suddenly you feel the sneeze coming on and a sense of relief, and a buzz is felt in the upper nasal area. Gachari Mudra allows you to rub these nerves and brings about this feeling. This feeling draws the attention away from the senses and the desires of the mind, and you focus on the contact that is made with the tongue. Number 5.
So basically, I mean, I think what we're approaching here is the claim that, to experience heaven while still attached to the mortal coil may be a possibility here if what this dude's saying is true, and if that's true, and this connection to Yeshua, some of his teachings, echoing some of these other teachings that are supposedly not connected at all, it's just very interesting to me. Again, I'm not trying to change anyone's beliefs or paradigm. And, honestly, I don't subscribe to 99% of what this dude's saying. But I think that there is enough important truth hidden in this sort of narrative that he's reviewing with us. I just think it's a travesty to ignore it and reject it offhand because we are told that it's evil, right? I just think that's absurd.
Kachari Mudra assists in turning on your Kundalini or opens up the knot at the Muladhara chakra. This is a big one because basically I'm telling you that you have something in your body that is dormant that you are not aware of. Throughout your life, you may have had glimpses of the electrical nature of the world and your body. For example, when my yoga instructor first showed me the small particles of electricity floating around in the air above the ocean, I immediately remembered watching them with great fascination as a small child. Another fascinating thing was dragging your feet around on a rug or a carpet and then touching your brother with your fingers, shocking him.
Yeah.
Whenever you fly in an airplane and go through clouds, look out the window. You will see little white sparks of electricity dancing everywhere. This is prana. The electrical system in our bodies is largely dormant because it is unbalanced and has blockages in it that doesn't allow the electricity to flow properly. The Bible refers to these blockages as the 7 seals. The senses are designed to pick up various electricities from the world. The sensation of smell is nothing more than when one of these electricities touches your olfactory nerves. The sensation of taste is when one of these electricities touches your tongue. Vibrations touch your ears.
Yeah, it's like damn right. On all this bit right here, it's absolutely 100% right, you know? And again, I can agree with this one bit of what dude's saying without necessarily jumping on board with all of the other stuff, right? I mean, y'all should probably understand exactly what I'm saying at this point.
Your ears, light hits your eyes, and energy touches your skin. All your sensations are made up of energy touching your body in one form or another that is interpreted within. The turning on your Kundalini nomenclature refers to opening up the knot at the Muladhara chakra and sending up the prana through the Sushumna as opposed to it going up the Ida or Pingala nadis. The way this is achieved through Kundalini yoga is you have to balance the nadis with nadi shohana so the prana starts traveling up the
La-di-da-di, we like to shahada.
Sushumna. Kachari Mudra prevents the outgoing air from stimulating the nerves on the roof of your mouth to send a signal to the diaphragm to contract. The practice of Kachari Mudra stills the diaphragm. Mula Bandha sends more prana up the Sushumna. Jalahandra Bandha locks the prana in, and finally Uddiyana Bandha.
I'm sorry, but my favorite of the bandhas is the Jalahandra Bandha because, dude, that like rolls off the tongue so fluidly. Jalahandra Bandha, dude, like honestly, say it with me, you guys. No, I'm kidding, really, but it's like one of the funnest things you'll ever say. Jalahandra Bandha. It really is a cool thing to say.
Allows a combination of prana that causes the Kundalini to ignite. There are several forms of prana or electricities in the body. A practice known as Mahabandha ignites the Kundalini. The word Maha means great, and the word Bandha means lock. Mahabandha means the great lock. It is comprised of 3 bandhas, Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and Jalahandra
And James Bandha. No, Jalahandra Bandha.
Bandha. Mula Bandha is the contraction of the perineum or pelvic floor. Uddiyana Bandha is exhaling all the air out of your breathing chambers and pulling the stomach in and up, creating a vacuum in the breathing chambers. Jalahandra Bandha is bringing the head down so the chin touches the breastbone, locking the prana in.
Okay, so these sorts of breathing exercises that dude's talking about are way beyond anything that I've ever even looked at, right? Or tried to do, okay? And the way that I was taught by my aunt was you're never really supposed to lock and force things in your breathing. But, you know, again, maybe that was something else so that, you know, I don't know. It seems that there are maybe conflicting ways that this stuff is interpreted. I don't know, man, but dibs on that right there. No, I'm kidding.
And these 3 bandhas, in combination with Kachari Mudra, turn on your Kundalini. Number 6, Kachari Mudra allows the sadhaka to push on a nerve center, shutting off all sensory perception. There is a bundle of nerves above the nasal turbinate area where the sensory perceptions of the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth go through. When your Kachari has advanced far enough, you can push on this bone which causes a compression of these nerves and stops all nerve signals from reaching the brainstem. With no electricity going to the brainstem, the mind shuts down, freeing the consciousness. In yoga parlance, this is called samadhi. You can see that the bone that you press on extends out like a diving board, and the bones supporting it are designed to bend, allowing this compression to take place. Number 7, Kachari Mudra allows the sadhaka to drink from the fountain of youth, or King Arthur's Holy Grail. The liquid the brain makes is contained in this cup-like bone, is also known as ayahuasca by the shamans in the rainforest, amrita by the yogis, and DMT by Western scientists. This liquid separates the consciousness from the mind. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus saw infants being suckled. He said to his disciples, "These infants being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom," referring to Kachari reaching the amrita. When stimulated with electricity from your tongue, your pituitary...
Okay, so like, yeah, dude definitely makes some pretty huge leaps. Like, I hate it when people try to support their argument with very sort of, like, in my opinion, far-fetched connections and facts, right? When, like, the stuff he's saying is already interesting enough without trying to convince me just how true it is. You know, I'm very wary of that. Like, you know what I mean? But again, not to beat a dead horse on the sort of same thing again, but I think you feel me?
The pituitary gland and the pineal gland make a white and yellow liquid respectively, and when they combine, they create a chemical compound that Western scientists call DMT. This compound collects in the sella turcica, which is a cup-like bone that houses the pituitary gland and is euphemistically known as the fountain of youth, or King Arthur's Holy Grail. This liquid literally shuts down the mind and frees the consciousness to experience its true nature, or oneness with the divine. When the electricity flows...
I mean, honestly, as far-fetched as that sounds, like, and you know, to anybody that has never had any sort of out-of-body experience, or maybe near-death experience, or maybe even, like, I don't know, trip experience, like, potentially. But for somebody that's never experienced anything like that, this stuff is way far-fetched. But, you know, at least for me personally, like, the gist of this last bit here very much rings true to me, you know.
Right under the pituitary gland, it starts vibrating, which causes the pineal gland to start vibrating, and they both produce copious amounts of this liquid. When this liquid is absorbed by the tongue, instant samadhi takes place. This is the goal of yoga on the physical plane. When Jesus was fasting out in the desert for 40 days, he was in a deep meditation drinking this liquid. The yogis call this liquid amrita. This liquid allows the sadhaka to live without eating or drinking anything. All illnesses disappear and youth returns. You can live in heaven, God consciousness, or hell, body consciousness. It is your choice. When the snake tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden with the apple, Eve took a bite of the apple and she gained access to the tree of knowledge, or knowledge of the body. It was an allegory for the kundalini residing in the lower chakras, or hell. The snake is a metaphor for her spine. The apple is a
Okay, so again, he keeps saying this is that and that is this. But, like, honestly, if you can just sort of hypothetically say, imagine him saying this may be this, and this could be that, and this seems like this. Like, honestly, I can kind of almost follow along with what he's saying. Like, I really do hate the definite positive claims. Like, that is a sort of pet peeve of mine. And I sort of refuse to go along with narratives just because of technicalities like that. But, you know, at the same time, I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, because I think that this sort of ancient wisdom isn't just trite, isn't just a waste of time, and it certainly isn't evil, right? Like, studying what other societies and cultures and religions believe and humoring it hypothetically is pretty far from evil. And you know, anyone who calls that sort of thing evil is an idiot.
apple is a metaphor for sex. When the kundalini resides in the sex or stomach chakras, just like an animal, you are only concerned with survival and procreation, sex and food. When the Kundalini is raised
and rock and roll.
to the higher chakras, the heart, throat, third eye, and crown chakra, your thoughts are dominated by love, intellect, and the divine. When your chakras are opened, you gain access to the tree of life or knowledge of God. In Genesis 1:27, it says, God created man in his own image. This does not mean that God has 2 arms and 2 legs. This means that God also has these chakras. Adam and Eve's falling was delving in.
You know, like, honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me too, dude. I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to convert anyone to fucking Hindu or whatever. Like, honestly, but like what he just said there makes a lot of sense to me. Like, it really does.
Into body consciousness. The choice is yours. Where do you want to place your energy? I would like to end this talk with a few questions to you. Why are the Catholic and Christian churches hiding the most important teachings of Jesus? Does anybody really believe that they didn't know where Jesus was from the age 13 to 30? Why are our government-funded schools teaching us the nonsense that we evolved from monkeys? Why are we brainwashed into believe that anyone who believes in creation is intellectually challenged? Life is not evolving. Consciousness is evolving. Anybody that understands DNA, the fact that a blueprint of how you are designed is in every one of your trillions of cells, knows that we were created. In understanding DNA, you have to be intellectually challenged to believe in evolution. Why is there a concerted effort to keep the
damn right, dude, damn right,
to keep the truth about who and what we are away from us? And most importantly, are you willing to spend 15 minutes each morning and night doing some simple exercises to attain enlightenment in this incarnation? One of these incarnations, you're going to have to do it. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven without your spiritual birth. In the Gospel of Thomas.
Okay, so like I sort of disagree with that, okay? Probably not for the reasons that you think, but I do disagree with that. So let me just roll that last.
2 arms and 2 legs. This means that God also has these chakras. Adam and Eve's falling was delving into body consciousness. The choice is yours. Where do you want to place your energy? I would like to end this talk with a few questions to you. Why are the Catholic and Christian churches hiding the most important teachings of Jesus?
Okay, for that one, I would say it's because that's what they've been doing since they killed him and then he resurrected. And it's like, you know, scholars estimate that in Jesus's living ministry, so when he was alive, walking around Galilee and everything or whatever, at most he had like probably like 2,000 or 3,000 people following him at the peak, right? Maybe as many as 10,000 people, right? But certainly not millions of people all over the world with that we see after that, right? And so, like, usually when a guy is publicly executed by the state and the temple after hunting him down and like publicly, you know, humiliating him and putting him on a cross and killing him, usually that's the end of their career as an influencer, right? Okay. But somehow after that, dude became like a rock star overnight, and we still like mark our calendars Genesis point with his birth year or whatever, right? And so to me, that is sort of a testament in and of itself to the fact that something definitely happened after Yeshua was put in the tomb. Okay? We definitely saw Roman soldiers who I think were ultimately executed because they said that angels took him. All right. So, oh, and by the way, he was also seen by people that knew him all over the place, all over like different lands, after he was, you know, brutally murdered publicly and buried, and 3 days later came back. And, you know, it's a pretty tall tale, right? That's pretty unbelievable, but I think it's true. I think that's like it's kind of the only thing that would explain how a dead dude can become a rock star thereafter. I mean, there's not really a whole lot else that makes sense to me. You know, there's other reasons for me personally, but not the point here.
Jesus. Does anybody really believe that they didn't know where Jesus was from the age 13 to 30?
You know, the point that he made earlier about the three wise men who came from the east, I think that's a big hint, dude. And you know, the frankincense, gold, and myrrh is also a big hint too.
Why are our government-funded schools teaching us the nonsense that we evolved from monkeys? Why are we brainwashed into believe that anyone who believes in creation is intellectually challenged? Life is not evolving. Consciousness is evolving. Anybody that understands DNA, the fact that a blueprint of how you are designed is in every one of your trillions of cells, knows that we were created. In understanding DNA, you have to be intellectually challenged to believe in evolution. Why is there a concerted effort to keep the truth about who and what we are away from us? And most importantly, are you willing to spend 15 minutes each morning and night doing some simple exercises to attain enlightenment in this incarnation? One of these incarnations, you're going to have to do it. You cannot enter the kingdom of heaven without your spiritual birth. In the Gospel of Thomas, Logos 2, Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all." As Jesus said in John 14:12, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father." There really are two parallel worlds you can live in. You can call them whatever you like, heaven or hell, the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, serving God or serving mammon, your chakras or your body, God consciousness or body consciousness. There is an internal world and an external world. You can follow whatever religion you like, but there is only one path to the Father. The reality is you are all sons and daughters of the living Father. God sheds pieces of light and creates us like a plant sheds seeds. You are a piece of God. You are.
I think a big part of what the sort of philosophy that dude's describing that he's got wrong, at least from what I see, and I could be way off on my interpretation of dude's philosophy, so just take this with a pinch of salt for sure. But you know, the way that I understand it, or at least my personal belief, for whatever it's worth, is that this is like some sort of a proving ground, right? So there are consequences for our actions here, right? Lasting consequences. Okay. And I think that's probably the main reason why they want to convince us of things like evolution and, you know, the whole heliocentric cosmology and all that nonsense. I think that's a big part of it, right? That's just my opinion.
You are God playing an elaborate game of hide and seek with yourself.
And, you know, I've heard that. I totally disagree with that. I mean, you have God that is the creator of all things, one creator intelligence that is responsible for inventing water and putting the spirit in your flesh, right? So that is something way, you know, like put the heavens in their circuits, you know, including the wandering stars, which throw a sort of monkey wrench in any physical plans you have for the heavens, right? It's not physical. And the creator of all things is, in my opinion, probably not physical. Okay. But in terms of like us being that, that's absurd. Like, I don't know. I totally disagree with that portion of it. I mean, sure, yes, we are indeed all sons and daughters of the Most High. Agreed. But then I think you also have the goats, and I think that you also have redemption. Like I think if you lay down your life for a friend or an enemy, I think Yeshua was right about that. I mean, I think like even for the goats, right? I don't know. But I guess if you would lay down your life for your friend, you were never a goat to begin with, right? So
Yourself. and you will continue to play this game until you open up your 7 chakras. This is your destiny.
Okay. And like that's pretty bizarre to me, but you know, I don't think that it's evil. Let me get rid of this dude here. Sorry. Okay. We're back. This has gone on way longer than I thought, but and I know that I was talking to the ether, and I know I lost a lot of fans on this one, but you know, I've never done any of this for fans. And the reason that I'm sharing this particular video with you guys is because I've mentioned it a few times. It's something that I never did sort of share publicly, at least this particular video, or at least share my specific views on it. And so, you know, anyone that wants to misinterpret what I'm doing here, other than seeking after truth and seeking to enhance my relationship with the Most High Creator of all things, and Yeshua ben Yosef, happy birthday, Jesus. You know, even though I'm pretty sure he was born in the spring or maybe like the fall, but definitely not the winter as far as we can tell. But to me, it doesn't really matter. And, you know, Christmas is one of my favorite holidays, second only to Halloween. But that has nothing to do with Jesus, right? It just has to do with I like, you know, I like things like vampires and dogmen or whatever. So anyway, man, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. That was the hidden teachings of Jesus, and take of it what you will. Okay. Again, I think that there is some very important nuggets in there that we cannot just necessarily reject offhand. And I think that the more we open up this discussion to all cultures, the better picture we have of the Most High, because the Most High created all cultures, really, if you want to get down to it. Okay. And so while this group of people thinks they have the only way, and this group of people thinks that, oh my God, anytime, you know, anytime we have religions coming together for unison, then that's evil and we need to be afraid of that. They've literally drummed that into the psyche of most well-meaning Christians, that when religions come together and try to find common ground, that's evil. Okay. Actually, I think it's the sign of the apocalypse, right? And you know, the apocalypse means unveiling or revelation. Revelation means when deceptions are unveiled. So anyone that's afraid of the apocalypse is a pedo or something. I don't know. All right. One love, you guys. This has been the Morgile. Shout out to our channel supporters. You know who you are, and they are very few, far between, but one love to you guys. And for those of you that do want to contribute to the channel effort this Christmas, there are links below for, you know, Patreon, PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo for whatever's most convenient for you should you choose to support. All right. One love. Y'all be good, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.